Coffee and Cream on Hail Varsity Radio with Andrew Rogers and Damon Benning.
It's been phenomenal so far. Everything's going pretty well. Just, vibing with my team, grinding and really competing with them. It's just setting me up and setting us up for success in the future.
I'm extremely hard on myself, probably my worst critic. And that's really sometimes I have to hold myself back. It's because that's what'll hurt me is when I'm too hard on myself and I'll let one mistake or one thing turn into two. So I think that's one thing I've definitely grown at and gotten much better at is just being able to kind of calm myself down and just say, kind of what's next play.
As I've gone around the state, the one thing that's really hit me, and I wanted to say it, and I mean this with elite humility and appreciation, is I want to thank the fans. They've been coming to Memorial Stadium and supporting this football team for a long time. I just want to make sure they know that we're grateful and we're thankful. We're working hard to earn the right to enjoy next season, to compete next season. We're trying to live by the whole mindset of day by day and not getting too far ahead. And we want them to know that we appreciate when they spend their money to come watch us play.
Words of wisdom from yesterday, going up on a Tuesday with my man Ravi. Lulla on Coffee and Cream in the Morning. We are live from the H&H Chevrolet studios, nestled in the rear of Hail Varsity Club. Of Hail Varsity Club.
It's a little early in the morning for
Come on, Ravi.
Rear, my guy.
We just got a lot of.
It's just a tip.
It's too early for that.
It's never too early for that.
I'm not messing with you today, Shane. I'm gonna get that out of the way right now. I walked in, the student staring at me for no reason. I had to ask him what he was looking at. I'm not messing with him
That's
today.
not a good start to the day.
No, and then he's hitting me with some things that I probably ought not to have said on the show.
That's pretty funny, though.
Yeah, I was having a moment. And full disclosure, we were just talking about this yesterday. You go, oh, I'm sorry. I just felt like we were having a normal conversation.
Yes.
And you forget.
100%. You forget that
there are thousands of people listening, right? Yeah. So that happened to me.
What are you going to do?
I don't know. Apologize later. Hopefully, if you're out there driving around, getting the kids to school, maybe you're going to work, be safe. Hopefully you stopped at the Beanery, got yourself a nice coffee.
Yeah.
Maybe a smoothie, maybe a snack to get your.
What kind of snacks they got?
So kind of like your basic breakfast little treats. I don't know if it smells as good as what you've got cooking.
Okay.
The hint of double smoked bacon. I don't believe that would be on the breakfast sandwich menu, but your bites like a little egg bite. Yeah.
Okay.
So make sure you stop out at the Beanery, the official coffee of Coffee in the Mountain. I see you've got yourself a little coffee, a lot of ice cubes and no straw. So we back on that again?
Well, listen, I didn't think a straw was a thing in iced coffees or.
Did you not listen to Apostrophe yesterday?
I mean, I try not to.
The straw is to keep you.
Did I tell you? I didn't tell you. He's texting me after getting on me about like Steph Curry in the 80s and whatever. And he's like, well, I mean, they kind of beat up Pete Maravich and I don't know. I think he threw like World Be Free at me or something.
So he went full old man on you.
I know. I was like, anytime somebody brings up World Be Free, they are an old head. But he's, they're going to target him on defense. It's like, they target him on defense now. Like, also, can we just like relax about like the 80s were so tough? They only played defense hard for like 30% of the time. Like the highlights all show that it was a bloodbath, and for those times it was. But look at the highlights you're looking at. It's always Pistons, Celtics, Lakers, right?
Some Bulls.
Late 80s, sure.
Okay.
But the Bulls didn't play like that. The Bulls didn't beat you up like those teams did.
Until they got Oak, and that's why they got Oak.
Yes, that's the reason.
And Rodman, yes,
why they got Oak.
100%.
Even Oak, or even Rodman, like he was physical, but he wasn't like Bill Laimbeer, like laying people out.
Well, I don't know, man.
I mean, I don't know. I watched a lot of '90s Rodman Bulls.
The worm was this? Is this pre Carmen Electra, pre Benjes, or like because early worm?
He was different. He was a different guy.
He was getting it. He was miserable to play against.
Well, that's because he was with the Pistons. That's a Pistons problem.
Yeah.
By the time he got to the Bulls, he wasn't like fighting people. unless it was like a cameraman. But like these old heads always want you to believe that the 80s were just this constant bloodbath, and it's like there was a lot of bad blood, and you could get away with way more, but 80% of the time you were playing against a team that was dramatically less talented than you. If you were a good team, the talent gap was a lot larger than
I don't know about that.
Between the good teams and the bad teams?
Yeah, I don't know about that.
All right, that's a discussion for a different day. But what I know for a fact is a lot of these teams were not D'ing up the way they do now.
Yeah, there were a lot of years if Milwaukee wasn't going through Boston, they would have won significantly more. The Moncrief, Marcus Johnson, like there were some good teams.
I'm not saying there weren't good teams.
I would say like the top 4 or 5, certainly, I think in my opinion, the top 3 or 4 and like the East and the Western Conference were more closely related than I think now.
That's fine, but what I'm saying is like depth of talent in the league. So like you didn't have
there were fewer teams though.
I get that, but if fewer teams should mean more talent on each team.
Yeah, and I think once upon a time, and I'm gonna get my years mixed because I'm not that old myself. I just watched a lot of NBA. It was hard to like not have a good player on the floor. I think you see that quite a bit now.
Yes. Right now, everybody's got a dude that you're a little bit scared of. Everybody.
I remember, when when the Lakers would like go to the bench, if a guy couldn't score, it's almost like, when's everybody else coming back in? Because I mean, you just look at some of the starting fives, they're pretty good.
I mean, understand
even like teams that aren't talked about, like when Mike Ray Richardson was like with the Nets, and I mean, there were not to go down, hey, I'm going to spank your hand, but there, I felt like, I don't know, maybe the skill wasn't as high end.
I think that's accurate.
But there were a lot more good players, I think, on one roster.
Ooh, I don't know if I want to go a lot more good. I listen, I mean, so you've got genuinely bad teams, right, in the league right now that they've got some real, like you have to go to Orlando and like you don't want to mess with Paolo Banchero. Like you don't want to mess, like Markelle Fultz is playing good basketball right now. You don't want to mess with Franz Wagner. Like there's the bad teams in the league still have dudes that everybody would want. And that wasn't always the case in the NBA in general. That's where I'm talking about. Like, yeah, the top of the league has always been pretty good. Now you had some years where it was, the one team, whether it was the Bulls or whoever, like when the Bulls were going through the 90s, the rest of the East wasn't that great. You usually had one team, either the Knicks or the Pacers, that would give them a problem. But besides that, there was a pretty big gap. What I'm talking about is like 1 through 15 or 14, whatever it was back in the day. That 14th team back then, whether it was like the Nets during their bad years.
Would you take a starting 5 of Mark Price, Larry Nance, Craig Elo, John Hot Rod Williams, and Brad Daugherty?
I mean, depends on whose rules we playing by. Because
that's a pretty good starting 5, right?
It is.
That Cleveland Cavs team didn't win a gosh dang thing.
I understand that. I do.
I just, just for context, right? So I think my point in saying that is, like, that's a good 5. That's a really good 5.
It's a real solid 5. Yes.
And I just think we skip over a lot of
that team's not winning anything today, though, either.
Well, it depends on how you play.
Okay, but you're taking those
like you let John you let some of these guys, like Brad Daugherty in today's game would play for 25 years.
Sure, yeah.
Oh, zero question.
That's fine.
Zero question.
And you go 25 years without a chip. That's fine.
How many 2-man games could Price, like let's say Price and Brad Daugherty play? The pick and pop, the pick and roll, oh, come on now. With the ability to kick to like Elo or somebody with a rim runner like Nance, I think we're sleeping a little bit on the evolution of the game.
We are sleeping a little bit on the evolution, and that's where I have trouble. Is everybody's more skilled now? So I look at those guys. It's like, yeah, Elo.
I think at the high end.
I was like, Elo is a nice shooter for the 80s. Is he? Would he be a nice shooter now? Like Elo or Doherty
with the way the game is called in terms of how you can't put a hand on a guy outside of 25 feet. Sure, he's gonna get good looks.
He's gonna get good. Sure, he's gonna get good looks. I just there's
Dale Ellis would shoot 1,000% from three.
I mean, I don't believe 1,000%.
Oh, I'm sorry. Is that a little
that
hyperbole?
That might be a little bit of an exaggeration.
How'd we get on this? Because of Severe's old band take?
Because Severe telling me that Curry couldn't hack it in the 80s.
Hey, you're kind of salty about
And I
it.
told him, I was like, well, he would just rest on defense because half the guys out there couldn't shoot. So you could hide him. You can't hide him now.
Something to be said.
Like, you can't hide guys on defense now. And it's honestly, part of it's Curry's fault because he murdered the last one in Andre Roberson, who was a one-way player. Just straight killed him on his home court.
Now, if you killed someone, notice I said that with an ED.
What kind of question is that?
You know what I mean? Like,
no idea, Shane.
Those guys don't exist anymore. The one-way players don't exist anymore. There was always one of those guys on the floor for everybody.
Yeah, I don't know about that though.
Everybody.
Robbie. I'm serious. Like, I mean, when Kevon Looney comes on the floor for you, you're like, yes, pencil him in for 12.
I mean, I'm never excited to see Kevon Looney.
Okay, but I'm just saying, like, you have selective memory, though.
No, I don't have selective memory. The the old heads have selective memory because they only.
I'm trying to. I'm the balance.
I appreciate
I'm
that.
like,
but you're still talking about the top 3-4 teams in the league. I'm talking about the bad teams.
Well, okay, so
like, there's a reason, and I know this is a little bit later in the 80s, but there's a reason the '96 Bulls won 72 games. That's because the bottom half of the league was free wins for everybody.
Okay, so how did Golden State make eclipse the record?
Because they were that good.
Oh, so Golden State was that good. The bottom of the league wasn't that bad.
What happened in '96? Expansion.
Oh, for sure.
So it was diluted, right?
Yeah, but you're still taking advantage of diluted franchises in 2023.
No, because the
talent
had caught up by that point.
No, sir. You're still taking advantage of diluted rosters in 2021, 2018.
See, that's where we're going to have a hard disagreement.
Robbie, there's no way, though.
There's more better. No. How many foreign guys we have playing in '96 and in the '80s?
Listen,
you're drawing.
You act like guys like Smush Parker weren't playing in the NBA.
That was 20 years ago, and he was a joke then.
It wasn't 20, but
it was close. It was like mid 2000s. It's like so it's 15, 16 years ago.
So like I can't believe we're doing this, but now my dander's up a little. So it's like, so the 2004-05 Pistons team that blew out,
that was a good team.
The Lakers. Are you looking at their roster and you're like, whew, man, rip Chauncey. People don't even want to give Chauncey Billups love now, and he's only 15 years removed from playing. Like, the revisionist history in order to like substantiate our current point.
That team is also one of the largest historical outliers ever.
Well, that's fine. Well, what about the Spurs?
Which one? The 14?
No. So would that be?
You're talking about the one that beat the Heat?
Yeah.
So it's 14.
Okay, is that an outlier?
No, you have Tim Duncan, who's an all-time great.
You have
Kawhi Leonard turning into an all-time great. You have Monty Ginobili. You have Tony Parker.
Kawhi Leonard going for 17 a night. Kawhi Leonard, the Tim Duncan that was playing 28 minutes a night. Tim Duncan, like,
go look at Tim Duncan's numbers in that series.
No, I understand I understand what the series was, but he wasn't Tim Duncan that is debated with Kobe and a couple of these guys for players of their decade.
It wasn't peak Tim Duncan for sure.
It wasn't even like,
but you had Kawhi on the way up, you had Duncan on the way down. They kind of met in the middle, and you still had really good versions of Tony Parker and Manu Ginobili. Plus, that was
isn't Bowen a guy that you're talking about that can't play in today's?
Yes, 100%. Bowen couldn't play today. Listen, I'm not arguing for mid 2000s. I would never.
It's just weird how we're not even going back that far. And we're making that far. No, because I think what we're forgetting about is you're drawing hard absolutes. I'm telling you, like, it's not as far removed as you think. right? Like you make it seem like it was like way yesteryear and obsolete. It is still, you could still make some of the same cases.
The early to mid 2000s.
Bro, you just had a team win 12 games 3 years ago.
Yeah, that was. But also the other thing you have here.
No. We just can't forward through expansion and act like it's not a diluted thing. It's still a thing.
Hold on here. You can tell me if I'm wrong or not, and I'm sure you will. But part of these really bad records now are intentional.
Oh, that's what it is.
Am I wrong? People tank on purpose now.
Right.
Was that a thing back then?
Well, I'm sure. Like, I'm sure you had the Rod Thorns of the world sometimes had to consider winning money for the Nets.
Well, yeah.
But listen, though. So we're in March.
Mm-hmm.
There's probably 6 or 7 teams that have their win total in the mid-teens, and we're gonna act like diluted isn't
okay. But go
like
look at
bad teams and bad teams or anything.
There's always going to be bad teams.
Well, there's several.
Yeah, there was like half the league before.
But I don't understand why you use the 72 win Bulls thing as a thing to make your argument with when expansion happened, because there's still bad teams.
Because initially, when you go from 95 to 96, when you add the 2 new teams, that is the most diluted it will be, is initially.
So Detroit, San Antonio, and Houston have 16 or less wins.
Yeah, they're all trying to lose.
Okay, I understand that. So
listen, you can make an argument that it's not a better product because of that.
Okay.
But
I'm cool with that, because we were acting like it was this hard, fast cut line. Like
what I'm talking about,
they're over here and we're over here.
What I'm talking about, because product and talent are different.
Because what you didn't want to say when the Bulls were winning 72 with expansion in 96, we were not talking about load management and teams taking nights off and not traveling when
agree.
Golden State was running through the league. So I mean, listen,
you're right. There's things in every era. What I'm talking about is overall talent on the rosters. Even those really, really bad teams. Like, there's dudes on Detroit that I would be super duper interested in on most teams in the league, right? There's dudes in Houston that I'd be really interested in on most teams in the league. I'm talking about the overall talent level, not the product they're putting on the floor, because they're choosing a lot of times to put a bad product out on the floor because they want to go get Victor Wembanyama. Like,
I love the isolated examples.
Well, I mean,
because that's really what that
is. There's always
though.
A guy, though. There's always a guy that like, we want to get this guy. Or we want to Sixers
who was tanking for Bennett to go to Cleveland? Come on, man! Like, we got to stop with this.
Listen, some people can't be helped.
Oh, this what's going to happen today, Shane.
Oh, I see.
And it started with you staring me down in the open.
Well, I had to ask him.
Yeah,
I blame Severe.
Back in the day.
Art, I talked to him the other day. We'll get Art back.
I'm just saying, there's no way that you could convince me that Steph Curry couldn't hack it in the 80s.
So we're mad at it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've won and lost a few arguments with him. Sometimes you just gotta gut it. He's
one of the most skilled basketball players we've ever seen in the history of the league.
And he would have played in any era.
And there's some dudes that transcend era, and people don't like to give Curry the benefit of the doubt there because of what he looks like.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just dumb. Because let's be honest, he's still 6'3", which back in the day, a 6'3" point guard was above average. That's not the case anymore. I get that. But 6'3" point guard back in the day was a good-sized point guard. You had a lot of 6'0", 6'1s running around back then.
By the way, 2014 Tim Duncan was playing 28.8 minutes a game, and he scored 15 points, and he only played 2 more years after that.
Look at his
So we're not even talking about non-peak Tim Duncan.
No, look at his
we're talking
numbers.
twilight Tim Duncan.
Look at his playoff.
No, I understand, right? In a vacuum, but they had to get there. Like, that was not good Tim Duncan.
That's also one of the most balanced teams you've ever seen. Like, look at the roster up and down.
That's fine. I'll give you the
like
balance.
If they needed more out of
But
Tim
I'm
Duncan,
giving you examples, and you're like, well, yeah, but like, if we're gonna go this whole apples to apples thing, then I mean, let's keep it 100, right? Like, that was not a individual, because we're talking talent, right?
Yes.
That was not a supremely talented basketball team.
It wasn't in their primes, right?
Okay.
Like you could
Like that San Antonio team was not. Woo.
But what did it take for them to win the title? The best team basketball I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, which is a lot of the Pistons. What happened with them and when they smashed the Lakers?
I mean, a lot of what happened with the Lakers was self-inflicted.
Maybe Karl Malone was or wasn't sleeping or making advances to Kobe's wife. I don't know.
It's not. Well, I think we do know.
Hey,
Karl Malone's history not great in that area.
Dude, he said he'd fight Kobe on site. He said it's a standing invitation.
Well,
I
think a lot of people feel that way about Karl Malone also, that they would fight him on site.
Yeah, has not aged well. Let's Shane, we're gonna sneak this in the first segment. I haven't even set the lineup yet.
We'll get there, man.
Let's go to my man Ronald. Ronald, good morning. How are you?
Well, good morning.
Oh, my man.
Just wanted to let you guys know, hey, I'm glad you guys are on first and foremost. I was getting killed in the morning. I didn't have anything to listen to.
You're my man, Ronald.
I'm thankful you guys are on. But if I could say one thing about Steph Curry.
Okay.
He's overrated. I don't mind. The kid can play. Not. Hear me out. Hear me out.
Okay.
When people talk about his historic shooting, do you guys know there's an organization that travels around the country 250 days a year that does the same shots every day? The whole team, which would be the Globetrotters, and that's basically what he does. You know, because the NBA allows you to float around, not get touched. The kid can make the shots, true enough. But tell me that he's the greatest of all time when you got Bird and Miller and guys like that are getting touched while they're shooting. And this guy is basically a globetrotter in the NBA. So there are a ton of guys that make his shots every day.
Ronald, let me ask you one quick question. Sir. How were you pleased with Nebraska's finish at the Big Ten tournament in wrestling?
What was that? Say what now?
Were you pleased with Nebraska's finish in the Big Ten tournament in wrestling?
Man, I tell you, man, I got goosebumps, and I wasn't even watching all of it. I had to go back and check. And 10 weight classes, right?
Yeah.
We got 5 in the finals. Has that ever happened with Nebraska?
No, first time ever.
Like,
and you were about 30 seconds away from getting 6 because Pinto was really, really good for 2.5 minutes.
Yeah. I mean, hey, I'm so thankful for Manning and sticking it out, but yeah, absolutely. But if the other guy want to trash me about Steph's take, I can take it. I'm a sponge.
Ronald, you're the man. I appreciate it. Thanks, buddy. Are you gonna be okay?
Yeah, that's the most ignorant thing I've ever heard in my life.
You gonna be all right? You seem very hurt.
Very hurt right now.
That's the most. I mean, like that's just like a hey, tell me you don't watch the NBA without telling me you don't watch the NBA. Like, congratulations, Ronald. Like, you know more about wrestling than I do, so that's cool. But I'm gonna tell you here about the whole Steph Curry situation. That's a guy that doesn't watch off the ball, because if you watch Steph off the ball, especially in the playoffs, that dude's getting killed.
Here we go
all the time. And first of all, Globetrotter shots. There's not anyone in the world that makes the shots Steph Curry can make. All right, no one in the world, now or ever.
You're my man.
And I'm a Larry Bird guy, so I'm not hating on Larry.
Hey, we're gonna get Ravi a beer, a Zipline Acres Ale. It's authentic, brewed Nebraska corn, crisp, clean, and light, locally brewed, and perfect after not a long work day, but any work day if you're Ravi Lulla.
Start.
Back after this, we'll set the light up. Coffee and cream.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 5 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hale Varsity Radio.
Yeah, I'm really careful, about the vocal thing. What we don't need is a bunch of spokespeople, right? I watched the highlight tape from last year. We put it together, so no knock on anyone else. Our guys put it together. It's all people giving speeches in the locker room. If you got to give a speech in the locker room, it usually means you're getting your tail beat. You know what I mean? So, to me, leadership is who's the first guy in the building, the last guy to leave, who does everything right. I said I wasn't going to signal people out, but I will say, who's a great leader in his own way is Brian Buschini, probably the toughest specialist. And I'll get some text messages from some guy. Brandon McManus is probably going to call me here in an hour after saying this, but one of the toughest specialists I've ever seen. And so when you have guys like that competing at a really high level, it just drives everyone around them. And so, I think we have some good guys. But Fedoni, he just wants to win, and so like the last week, you had to get all your teammates if you got all your teammates to a match and took a picture, you got double points. And trying to get 10 other college students to show up at something at the same time is hard, right? And it seems, what does that mean? Well, I know it means something to the other student athletes to have people there watching them, but I think you got 11 people to the beach volleyball match and took a picture, and so he just finds a way to get it done. He likes to win. He's very competitive.
Welcome back. I think not yet. We're in the midst of cooler heads prevailing as we welcome you back to Coffee.
Maybe you are. I'm not.
Coffee and Cream in the morning. Shane Schillerberg doing his thing in his little clubhouse back there, probably getting some direction from the great Sasha Durkin. I'm here with Ravi Lulla, live from the H&H Chevrolet studio. Ronald just lit a match and basically referred to Steph Curry as a Harlem Globetrotter, and Matt Rhule just continuing to drop chicken nuggets. So we watched this press conference together. You and I.
Yeah.
We listened intently. You said something to me that even for you, I felt like, oh my gosh. And I don't mean for you because you're not capable of it. It's just not your style. Okay. You said, sitting just like this, kind of big old barrel chest, you said, kind of hard not to drink the Kool-Aid.
It is.
It is.
It really is.
It's difficult, right? Like, and I've talked about this, you guys and gals, since he's been here. Mm-hmm. Since he's been here, I'll use different analogies, right? You almost have to check yourself when you hang up the phone or you get done listening to a press conference and say, man, am I vulnerable, or am I just hearing what I want to hear? Did he just get over on me? Like, and so sometimes people don't understand what I'm really saying until you're actually in that position.
Well, and that's why I think, I don't know if we said this on air or off air on Friday when we had Dr. Elza on, but I would love to spend 15, 20, 30 minutes in a room with Matt Rhule, because I'll trust my instincts and intuition when I'm sitting down with a person way more than I do on sound clips or a press conference, right? But that being said, having not had that opportunity, he sounds exactly like I want my football coach to sound.
That's the thing.
And not just a football coach. So not just a football coach, anybody who I am investing any amount of time, effort, resources, energy, whatever in, I want them to care to the level that he appears to care. And I want them to handle their business the way that, at least right now, he is talking about handling his business.
Yeah,
like that's to me the thing that is important is, and I really liked the locker room clip or the locker room
what'd
speeches.
You say? You're like, oh,
I was a little taken aback because it's like that was a strangely honest. Like most football coaches aren't that honest. Most of them love the locker room speeches, right? Most of them, kind of get their juices flowing about it, and that's not what he's about. He's about, and there's so many things that either you've told me or that he said himself that check the boxes of, oh, he's not just saying that. Like we were talking yesterday about, he's like, you can come on the junior days. Those are fun. Those are cool. But like, just come see what we're like every day. Like those two things line up to me, because when he says, I'm not about the locker room speeches, I'm about who shows up early and who stays late, who's putting the work in, who's working through the process. And then he also says, oh, don't come for the big events. I mean, you can, but I'd rather you see how we just operate on a day-to-day. Like in my mind, it's like there's a lot of things lining up here that if he's a con man, he's the best there is.
Well, so there's a lot in there. Let's just start with the style over substance thing.
Sure. Okay.
Because that's really what it's about, right? Because I know what fans will say. They'll say, hey, listen, we kind of heard this before. Matt Rhule's talking about details. We heard Scott Frost talk about details. I think it's early and we haven't played games, but the fundamental difference, and Shano, the clip is the one where he's talking about details. Because I'm not sure if you sent that to me, but he's talking about the importance of practice It is guys can be too cool for school speech. It is.
Was it 6? I think was too cool for school.
No, it is. Tell me, play clip 15, Shane. Let me see if that's it.
I mean, we'll have a couple, scrimmage days. I mean, the NCAA has rules. I mean, we won't be. Again, we're not going to be like wanting. We're not going to be dumb. It's just, to me, it's all about the quality of the contact. I mean, we're going to have, we believe in playing with dominant contact, and so we'll drill that way. We'll rep that way. I'm not a big like helmet, shoulder pads, no pants guy. Like, we'll either be in helmets or we'll be in pads, and so to me, I mean, there'll be live days, there'll be non-live days. I mean, we'll follow all the rules and do all that, but I just think it's the quality of contact, right? Like even when we're thudding, we won't be tagging guys off. I mean, we won't hit them from the side or from the back, but we won't go to the ground on days we're thudding. But we're going to strike, and we're going to, to me, these guys are young, they're getting trained. They're not getting coached, they're getting trained. You get coached at the next level. Right now, they're training themselves on how to block, how to tackle, how to get off blocks, and so we have to train that. And the only way to do that is do it repetitively. So I think it'll be physical, but it won't be caveman like. I mean, we're not going to go out there and just have a bloodbath. We're going to be smart. We do. The greatest gift I can give our players is health, and so I want to keep them healthy, but I also want to turn them into the best player they can be.
That's the difference between talking about specifics in detail and being specific in detail. Do you remember when he was talking real time and I was sitting next to you?
Mm-hmm.
What do you remember the part in that clip where I was like, that's what I'm talking about?
Ooh, no, which one was it?
Tackling.
Oh, yeah. Listen, the behind and the sides. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very specific.
Yes.
What do I harp on every Saturday and Sunday when I see it live is those guys aren't tackling enough because they don't know how to tackle.
Mm-hmm.
I can't stand the coming in high and coming in from the side and dropping your weight down. We call it an anchor tackle because you're anchoring down.
Mm-hmm.
It is a piss poor way to tackle, and you should not be taught like that. He was very specific. He just knows.
Mm-hmm.
Listen, I'm not talking about coming high or coming in from the side. I'm talking about doing this, and this when we tackle. It has to be repetitive because if it's repetitive, you can do it over and over and over again. Because not only is it muscle memory, you learn to get in position.
Yes. And if you're in position, the chances that you're going to do it right dramatically higher.
Hurrdat.
That's so. What you're talking about.
It does. So it doesn't seem. And I'll hang on.
Yeah.
So it doesn't seem like much when he says it.
Right.
It's just
especially if you're not really paying attention.
If you're not really paying attention, it seems kind of innocuous.
Yeah. It seems like he just kind of rambles a little bit sometimes.
Listen,
but
that clip was so good.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard for me. Because that's what and it's not because, oh, man, DB, it's just because he agrees with you. No, I think fundamentally, if you ask 98% of coaches out there, that's how they would teach it.
Yeah.
That's what they would say. That's the verbiage that they would use. And you're like, well, no kidding. Well, if it's so easy when he says it and now we're vibing, why does no one else say it? Why has no one else spoke like that to us in 20 years?
Well, more importantly than why didn't they say it, it's why didn't they do it, right? Because whatever you say doesn't really matter. And that's what we're still waiting on Rhule is to see if he actually does it, right? But here's the thing that I will
clip was so good.
Here's what I'll differentiate between that clip especially and what we've heard throughout the years with other coaches, right? They'll be like, yep, we want to be detail-oriented. We want to be process-oriented. But that's as deep as they go. Right? Can you remember another head coach over the last 20 years digging into specifics that way?
No, because we're using it like showing up on time, having a conversation without looking at your phone.
He's like, hey, we're going to hold people accountable. And then he tells you how he's going to hold you accountable. That's not something we've gotten before. They're just like, yeah, we want to build culture. And then it's like, okay, cool. What's that mean? They're like, yep, we're going to build culture.
I'm telling you, man, when he says culture, I don't roll my eyes because I know how important it is. And we're going to get into that. Over and over.
He tells you how he's going to do it.
Coming up from Varsity, our very own Brandon Vogel. Up next.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning. We'll be back.
Yeah, that's really for the mat drill. What we want is we want them to have elite feedback every day. It takes about 2 hours for the staff, and we watch every single rep of the mat drill, and we grade guys, and they're getting feedback, right? Like, to me, when people say power corrupts, I've always felt like powerless corrupts. When you're powerless.
Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
Welcome back. Little programming edit notice. We welcome in from Hale. Do you have the yet? I can see coming up on my screen. All right, we do have it coming up. From Hale Varsity, B. Vogue's editor, which comes with a lot of pressure. Brandon, good morning. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you guys?
I'm good. Hey, right off the bat, I want you to listen to a clip. We're going to play one for you from yesterday. Shane, hit the button.
Yeah, that's really for the mat drill. What we want is we want them to have elite feedback every day. It takes about 2 hours for the staff, and we watch every single rep of the mat drill, and we grade guys, and they're getting feedback, right? Like, to me, when people say power corrupts, I've always felt like powerless corrupts. When you're powerless to change your situation, when you feel like, hey, no matter what I do, I'm just going to always be this. So there's going to be transparency and there's going to be honesty. It's going to be very, very direct. I've learned over the years, like, you can be direct without, attacking somebody. So this is one way. It's, you have a great day, you're in a black jersey. You don't have a great day, you're in a red jersey. It's been fun for me, this being my fourth head coaching job, seeing guys on social media from here, talking to guys from Baylor, talking to guys from Temple, and them all talking to guys from Western Carolina about the mat drills, about pushing prowlers and all that. So that part's been fun because there's this common experience of, hey, this is hard to go through, but they get feedback every day. And again, if you make things with these guys, if I say, hey, let's go run 10 40-yard dashes, they'll do it. They might not like it. But if I say, hey, let's see who the fastest is, they'll run 50 of them to keep trying to prove who's the. So if we make it competition and that's what the jerseys do, then they'll compete at it and they'll fight for it.
Brandon, I'll get you started off with this. We've heard Matt Rhule talk a lot over the offseason since he's been hired. How much of our buy-in to him, and I'll admit I'm drinking Kool-Aid as much as anybody at this point, how much of it is that he actually does sound different, and how much of it is we're just so desperate for him to be different?
Good question. Let me think. I probably, I mean, I have no reason to disbelieve anything that he's been saying at this point, but I also just come in knowing that first spring under a new staff is Kool-Aid chugging time. So I'll say it's probably 60% different. And I think the difference that I've noticed with him is the level of detail he'll go in with some of these items. It's not just we're going to hold guys accountable. In that clip we just listened to, it's like, well, here's like 4 ways that I'm going to mention in these 45 seconds or whatever it was that I'm actually doing that.
Yeah.
And the fact that, got word that there was probably a press conference coming up on Monday, middle of last week, with a couple of players. When it came out on Friday that those 2 players were Thomas Fidone and Chief Borders,
no one would have picked that. No one.
No, really piqued my interest. And then we got the note about why those guys are there. So Matt Rhule, since the very first press conference he had, has been talking about competition. First time we get to talk to players in kind of this official capacity, it's 2 guys who have excelled in that piece of it. So you're seeing a little bit of backup of everything that he said to this point, which does stand out to me as a little bit of a difference from past coaching staffs.
Maybe it's just my K-8 certified background with the old emphasis in special ed, mild to moderate to be specific. But my man dropped Socratic methods. He's talking about powerless corrupts. When he says things like that, and then I can see the practical application, what you guys are talking about, how he gives you examples of what those words mean. Don't you just get the sense that they're actually modeling the behavior, right? I know they're competing in the drills. I know that they're super gun-ho, but you just get the sense that they know that they're being watched, and that's important to them when they invite you in their house.
I think so. I too laughed yesterday live when he brought out the Socratic method. Appreciated that. But the powerless quote also kind of stuck out to me, and I think he did a good job of outlining why he said what he said. But as I kind of, when I was listening to that real time, my reaction was like, okay, that makes sense. Like, one of these things that I think is a challenge for coaching at any level is, and particularly once you get to this level, the money's really high, the pressure is extraordinarily high. It becomes hard to kind of continually convey, like, look, guys, I can't want this for you. I want to win. I want to see you guys have success, but you've got to want to have that success too. That's the only way we're going to get there. And that's kind of how I read into that comment of his that we just listened to.
Brandon, Damon and I have been talking about chess versus checkers with Matt Rhule a lot, and how, we're trying to talk ourselves into or just figure out how much of what he does is just, hey, this is how I operate, and how much of it is him thinking 2 or 3 steps ahead. In light of, you mentioned Thomas Fidone and Chief Borders being kind of total wild cards in terms of being the ones to talk yesterday. How much of that do you think is kind of a chess move on his part to say, hey, if you do the things we ask you to do, you're going to get privileges that other people don't get?
I think it was a big piece of it. And the fact that it was outlined specifically, like on last Friday, hey, here's why you're going to hear from these 2. Definitely felt like a calculated move. And, it's been an interesting balance with Rhule, because we have gotten to hear from him a good amount, considering they haven't even started spring football yet. And I would describe him. The thing has resonated with me is that he does come across as very like plain spoken, as like, hey guys, here's what it is. But don't think that hey, I'm saying this to these guys, the media, us, for a reason, because I know it trickles down. Like there is a strategic element, I think, that he does a good job of disguising a lot of the time, whether intentionally or not, but it's there. Like, I don't look at this as like, it is what it is. There's always, I think, something a little bit more going on. And having been through this process twice in relatively quick succession in rebuilding two different programs, I think there's a little bit of sticking to the playbook, but knowing that the playbook's a little bit different each place you go.
Oh, that's interesting. So so I think understanding, and he tries to outline it in terms of what it looks like, but I think we too often confuse simple with easy. He says some things that seem pretty simple on the surface, but don't always appear very easy to execute, even in our own personal lives. How important is that he's like giving the actual examples? And because he'll say things like, listen, just simply being on time, getting 10 guys to one thing. You get this, you hear it, the powerless, corrupting, the getting constant feedback. What's another? He's got a ton of examples. I feel like, we watch every rep, every mobility thing that they do. Those seem simple, but they're not easy. How quickly should we learn that distinction if we want to coexist with this staff?
Yeah, I think it might be kind of the key to their chosen leadership style. Like, it's easy to understand the expectations. The expectations themselves are still going to be difficult to hit for some guys. Chief Borders, a guy who's been on campus for barely 2 months, it's clearly clicked with him. Like, he's understood it to this point. So I think that's always where you're trying to strike that balance between easy and simple. And that's a really good way to put it, Damon, because they are different. Like, the easier it is to understand, I think, the expectations being asked of you as a player, that helps. The harder those things are to hit, at least at this stage where you're kind of still starting out under a new staff, that's okay. Like, it's designed to be hard in that regard. And we'll see where we stand, 2 months from now, kind of when the portal opens back up and Nebraska has closed the book on this spring session.
Brandon, we talked to Dr. Elsa last week. We've heard from Matt Rhule a lot. The vibe that I've gotten from basically everyone associated with the program that I've heard from is that they kind of expect this thing to turn around faster than the last two do. Is that a vibe that you've gotten from them as well, or am I maybe just reading too much into positive off-season talk?
I don't think you're reading too much into it. Based on what we've heard and just kind of the way that I look at Nebraska football at the moment, like, this doesn't have to be the hard year one that this staff, portions of this staff saw at Temple and Baylor. I don't think it could be, and it's not, a referendum if things end up going that way this fall. But I would expect Nebraska's preseason win total to be somewhere close to 6.5, which, is where it's kind of been for much of the past 3 or 4 seasons. So that says to me that, we know Nebraska didn't hit those numbers in the recent past, but it kind of says to me that, hey, they kind of look at this team, the Nebraska's talent, you remove the coaching staff, talent, returning production, all that stuff, that's pretty similar to where it's been for most of the past 4 or 5 years. And if we look at the past regime and say, well, it's pretty clear that Nebraska underachieved for whatever reason, just getting them back to, I think, hey, being as good as you actually can be, maximizing what this program can be now. I think if that happens, Nebraska fans are going to walk away pretty happy with the 2023 football season, because I think that's where Nebraska's true level is at.
One of the best in the business. That's Brandon Vogel. B, enjoy the weekend.
You too, guys. Thanks.
Coming back, we'll start hour number 2.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute.
We came into the offseason feeling like we wanted to, build strength and mobility. I think we have. Feeling like we wanted to learn the process, and that we're going to undertake, and wanting to build a sense of brotherhood amongst the team. I think we've made a lot of steps in that direction. I think now it's just time to really that process take that over into football. In our program, practice is everything. It's the most important thing that we do.
Coffee and Cream on Hail Varsity Radio with Andrew Rogers and Damon Benning.
We came into the offseason feeling like we wanted to build strength and mobility that we have. Feeling like we wanted to learn the process and wanted to build a sense of brotherhood amongst the team. We made a lot of steps in that direction. I think now it's just time to really that process take that over. And our program practices everything. And whereas people focus on the results, we try to focus on things we can control, the way we practice, the attention to detail. And what I'm finding with this team is they're highly, highly, highly competitive. But sometimes the small details, as the most 8 to the 22-year-olds, they get away from us a little bit. So can we take our sense of competitiveness, our toughness? This is a tough league. Can we take that competitiveness and that toughness and carry it over onto the football field, and also add in precision and detail? If we can be really competitive and tough, but also detailed and precise, we have a chance. And so I'm anxious to start that process on the football field with the guys. And then I think it's just for each, our job is to help each player find a way to get on the field and be in the right position. So try to teach those guys today.
Man, sometimes I just shake my head as we welcome you back into Sour number 2 on Coffee and Cream with Ravi, Lulla, live from H&H Studios, Hail Varsity Radio. Hopefully you are with us on 590 or in YouTube on television. You are. We appreciate the comments and feedback. Once I figure out how to respond, I will do that, because I don't know if I have the ability to respond. That is usually a Uncle Ruru Rogers thing, who will be back tomorrow. But man, I'm on this thing, and I feel like, Ravi, which is why I'm glad, because I know you're not afraid that you'll go deep and you'll give some pushback here. Maybe you won't, but I think sometimes I can be exhausting because I'm a little more philosophical, right?
I like that, but yeah.
I can be a little more philosophical than like a typical guy that's run into a lot of things his whole life.
Yeah.
But I also know that just doing it that way didn't work for me. Right. Like there's no long-term sustainability. And I had to figure out kind of the why, because that's how and the versus the what, because that's how I think. He's hitting all the right notes with me, because I think if we're going to function as a fan base and in the media, I'm telling you, we got to have command over this simple versus easy thing. Because the knee-jerk reaction to what he says is no kidding. I'm telling you. I guarantee people are listening and they're like, oh, well, man, duh.
He just said something in that clip.
Go ahead.
There, okay? He said, our goal is to get every player ready to be on the field. And you would think off the surface, well, yeah, duh, right? But how many coaches have you met that they worry about their starters, maybe their next group of guys, and that's it? Like, I've been there.
Yeah.
Like, I have been that coach who's like, okay, these are my rotation guys, basketball, not football. It's like, these are my starters. These are my rotation guys. These guys just don't get in my way, right? And that's obviously not a good way to operate. And it sounds super obvious, like, yeah, we should get everybody ready to play. It's like, yeah, but everybody's not going to play. So as a coach, it's really easy to pare down in your mind. It's like, I got about 40 guys I got to pay attention to, or 50, whatever the number is, right? And when he goes, our goal is to get every guy on the roster ready to play, that sounds really, really simple, but it's not easy, because you've got 100+ guys on that roster, currently 100 scholarship guys on the roster still, basically, in addition to your walk-ons. You know how hard it is to give that level of attention to detail and individualized attention to each one of those guys? That is incredibly hard to do. Yeah. He said something in the last clip. We watch every single rep or every single stretch or whatever it was, that like in off-season conditioning and all that. It sounds simple. It's like, yeah, the coaches should be paying attention to what you're doing. You know how hard it is to pay attention to every single rep that every single guy is doing?
Dude, it's and I've said this a lot. So if people have heard anything over the last, I don't know however long I've been doing this, since 04, 05, in terms of media hits versus full-time versus coaching, right? It's 18 years, 20 years. And I always say I like to coach my way into having options. I need options. I don't want to be married to one particular player, because it's a recipe for disaster. I'd rather be caught, or I'll say I'd rather be caught with than without.
Yeah.
Right. I want to have options.
Well, and how many times in the last however many years has that bit Nebraska, right?
And it's a lot easier for me to do as a coordinator or a position coach than it was as a head coach, because head coach, it's a little more topical and a little more philosophical. It's not as hands-on, and you have to really have staff that you trust, that that's their same thing too. Even Because I think what happens is it's multi-layered. It's not just good from a coaching standpoint. I want to be able to go to my bench. Hey, listen, for as great as Christian Jones is, my outside linebacker at Omaha Westside, he just got another offer from Stanford. There was a stretch this season where he and I had to have some real hard conversations about upping his level of play and what I needed from him. Otherwise, he wasn't going to play anymore.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So he can see how practice is going. Who else is getting ready to play? Those are real conversations. And one of the things I love about 8-Ball, I call him 8-Ball, is he received it. He needed clear instruction, and he said, Coach, tell me what I need to do. We met a couple of weekends because that's what we do. He came to one of my little guys' football games, and we talked, and to watch his evolution, because I asked him to do 15,000 things more than what he was doing at his previous stop. He got to rush the passer for a long time. Hey, you're on the weak side, man. Get after the QB. Hey, listen, in this odd front, I know you're closer to a 4-3 outside linebacker than you are a 3-4 guy. Be patient because you have a lot of tools. We gotta play some coverage. You gotta take on this puller. Weak side run game. I need you here. He needed to know that I had options. Not everybody is in that deal, but what it does do for this team, and I think it does for young people, it's freeing for the coach. Yeah, I got 2 or 3 guys I can play. Some guys aren't afforded the luxury, but I still think you have to be willing to go there.
Sure.
It brings me back to Mike Tomlin when he says, well, this guy can't learn and this guy's he doesn't learn. He said, that's not a them problem. That's a coaching problem. So I think we got to embrace that, which Coach Rhule appears to. And the players know they matter. Like, I'm in this deal. I get your attention. I matter. Like,
so that's what
it sounds simple, but it's not as easy to do.
So that's what I was going to say when you're talking about Christian Jones, right? You said he was able and willing to receive what you told him. Why was that? Because you have a relationship with Christian Jones that goes beyond I'm your football coach, right? He knows you care about Christian Jones, the person, so he is willing to listen to you as Christian Jones, the football player. And that's why everything that, we're talking about football specific things from the press conference yesterday, but the reason these things work, even if they are hard, because they're really, really hard, especially these conversations. When you have to have conversations, he's talking about Mr. Irrelevant was a starter last year.
Hey,
do you think he's had hard conversations with that starter last year?
Yeah. And remember, he's a guy that doesn't love labels because he thinks sometimes you can adhere to him. But when he says that and that's your title, you probably know
he's already had that conversation with you.
Yep.
100%.
And he knows that you've earned it.
Yes. He knows that you've earned it. Because listen, he didn't call him Mr. Irrelevant because he thought he was the worst guy on the roster. He had a point system, or basically it was like, hey, this is Mr. Irrelevant, right? But you're allowed to have those conversations. You're allowed to have tough conversations when you've put in the equity. You've earned the equity of the relationship. Otherwise, none of it works. You can't have hard conversations with somebody that they don't know 100% that you have their back or you have their best interest, right? If Christian Jones didn't believe 100% that Damon Benning has his best interest at heart, he doesn't receive that conversation well. He's like, well, coach, I was doing good before. Like, why you all up? Why are you getting on me about this?
And my guys know, right? I hadn't had him for very long, and he was kind of new. And I would, with young people, not necessarily adults. Although I would say one of my love languages is touch. It's top 2, 3. I like hugs. Like, I like to hug my guys. Hey man, how are you doing?
Yeah.
He's Teddy Rizak may beat him to the punch, but it's close. So I got 3 guys: Trevor Spady, Teddy Rizak.
It's not huggers
that will give me the first hug of the
day.
day.
They'll go after you. Okay, cool.
And
cool,
Christian Jones.
Nice.
I just was at the game the other day. Hey, coach, how you doing? I say, hey, Christian, I needed that love touch.
Yeah.
I didn't say Christian. I said 8-Ball, but
yeah,
I needed that love touch because he those guys know. Teddy had to move positions. I didn't want to. It was not popular with DB, right? But I'm not the head coach. So our culture is, bam, right? Be a man. Go along to get along. I got your 6, right? I got your back. So I was like, it's my guy.
Yeah.
What do you mean he's got to play safety? He's playing as well as anybody these first 5 games. What are you doing to me?
Yeah.
And, Coach said, hey, you got to trust me. So I tell all the personal stories to say, without the relationships, guys aren't willing to do what you ask them to do. You can't say to, hey, Javen Wright, this is what I need you to do, or Miles Farmer, or, Grant Taggy, or, hey, listen, Luke, this is a different role for you, right? This is what I need you to do with these young guys. And if you don't have this, what's my favorite thing I love about Coach Mack? One of my favorite things I love about Coach Mack, his ability to, sometimes I can't always see it. I can see how it manifests itself, but I do have firsthand accounts, right? As obviously knowing guys on the team. But like I use the example of Frederick King, right? Okay. Kalkbrenner is hurt. King looks like a dude. Probably should be playing more. The level of rapport that they have, you can go back to the bench playing this role. We're going to do this. Arthur Kaluma can get benched. You can come back and do this. You can have a tough stretch with Nimhart. You can have some talks. You can empower Trey Alexander. Like, if you're not having these kinds, if you can't go there as a coach, that stuff does not work. Hey, the pocket pass is a pocket pass. When he got it, when I listened to him last, when Mitch got it to him, and instead of being it was thigh high instead of in a shooting pocket. That stuff, Matt. I was like, wait a minute. Like, that's the kind of attention to detail you're talking about. Even with that highly skilled a team, this was a couple years ago with Mitch, but I just remember when he said it about wanting pocket passes where they are and how they rep it over and over and over in practice where that pass is supposed to be. Sounds simple.
Not easy.
Not easy.
Well, let me give a real world example for, the adults out there, that maybe they aren't coaching or they haven't been on a team in a long time, of that simple versus easy. Is when I was mid-20s, basically, I took this financial class, right? Basically, the main takeaway from the financial class was make a budget. And that's the simplest thing you can do when you're working with your personal money, right? Make a budget. But it was like, oh, if I make a budget, I know where all my money goes, instead of just ending up at the end of the month being like, where'd all my money go?
Yeah.
Simplest thing in the world. Making a budget and sticking to it, not easy always, right?
Yeah.
And listen, there's other things the guy said that I'm like, man, I don't necessarily agree with or whatever. But honestly, the big takeaway was like, hey, make a budget. You know where your money goes. And just kind of light bulb goes off, and you're like, people pay him for this information. But it's the simplest thing. It's building block number 1 with finances. Yes, start with a budget. But that's a thing that people need to be told sometimes, because if you're just out there on your own, whether you're a football player, whether you're a young professional trying to figure out your money, whatever it is, sometimes you just need to be told point blank, this is the thing you need to do first. And then you can go and do the rest of the things. But it's almost like giving permission to start. And I think for a lot of kids, it's giving them permission to try. There's a clip that I think we're going to play later about the Too Cool for School.
Shane?
Do we have that, Shane?
Yeah, we have that clip. That is clip number 2 Cool for School. This is fantastic. Shane, play clip 6, please.
These guys are really, really competitive. So, I think if you talk to the other athletes on campus, I think we had I showed up to a tennis match. I think we had 30 football players at a tennis match, so that's sort of like, hey, we can do things to earn points. Sometimes some guys can be too cool for school. These guys weren't. They wanted to do this. And, I did a similar thing, and Christian McCaffrey was fight, scratch, and clawing to win. So it's, good players like to win. I've just learned that over the years. And so these guys, but I think it's guys like Thomas, they Fedoni, it's guys like, Chief and all those guys. They really drove this thing. And, we had to replace a captain or two because they weren't quite doing everything right. This was good for our team to realize that when who you say you are is the same as who you actually are, what you actually do, you're living a pretty good life. And when you're not, people get exposed. So it's been fun, but it was pretty quick, to be quite honest.
So what I wanted to get to on that one.
Sometimes some guys can be too cool for school. These guys weren't. They wanted to do this.
Like sometimes with young people and sometimes with adults, I was like this. I had to go to therapy. Like that you just did, right? Sometimes you need
been there.
Sometimes you need permission to care and you need permission to try hard. Because if you do those things, then this is what I learned was if I try my hardest and fail, then I have to take responsibility for what happened. If I don't try my hardest, I can always blame someone else. I can always blame, the coach had it out for me. Yeah. You can always say, well, I never got the playing time that I should have. I would have balled out, right? If you try your hardest and you don't get on the field, or you try your hardest and you don't perform the way you want to, then you have to start taking accountability for your actions. And that gets a little scary for everyone, right? Not just kids, for everyone.
Zero question. You ever been around those people, and you see it in athletics a lot. They don't want the expectations that come with results.
Yeah.
So they underachieve.
Yeah, they dog it.
They don't want to be held accountable.
Yes. And then you'll see flashes of it, right? And you'll be like, oh, where's that, right?
Do you know why I think people do that? It's because they always have room for an excuse.
Yes.
If they don't do it the whole time.
And if they do it the whole time, or they give full effort the whole time, it's on them. Whatever happens is on them. If you don't try hard, and it seems counterintuitive, right? If they're not trying hard or they're not giving their all, in the back of their mind, they already have the built-in excuses. Because what it comes down to, and we don't like to say this out loud,
this ought to be good.
They're afraid.
Yeah.
They're afraid of because they've been the most talented player on every team they've ever been, right? They're afraid of what it means if they're trying their hardest and they're not good enough, because they don't equate it to, and you talked about this with Xavier Betts a lot. A lot of times you don't equate
by the way.
A lot of times they don't equate it to, I'm not good enough at football, because a lot of things, the only thing they've ever been valued for in their life is football. They equate it to, I'm not good enough as a person. And so you build the relationship with them that Matt Rhule does, or that the coaching staff does, or that you do with your guys, and you give them value as a person first, so it gives them permission to try hard enough to be okay with failure.
Hey, and so you know what's interesting about that? Let me double down. How about the guys that have been replaced?
Yeah, the captains he's talking about that got replaced.
So it's either, as my barber likes to say, it's either barbecue or mildew. You're going to eat good or you're going to rot and stink, right? He'll always say, he'll cut in Caleb's hair. It'll be a tough game or something. He's like, hey, man, barbecue or mildew. And it's just like, it's a weird analogy. But I think that's like a natural life sifter, right? Where you like shake it up and you
see what you're left with.
Yeah, because I know people wonder, and he has players. Just had this conversation with two of them last week. Is it always going to be like this? Is it always going to be like this? And I said, listen, I don't know the staff that well yet, but I'm just telling you, after a while, it becomes a way of life.
Yeah. And frankly, if anything, the standard probably gets higher. Yeah. As you have success, the standard gets higher.
Because you've had those, Shane, you have those bosses, or maybe education is a better example, because I've been in these situations too, where people make things tough initially, and they see what.
Yeah, what's the phrase? It's
coaches do it all the time.
It's easier to lighten up than tighten up.
Yeah.
Like you can't start laissez-faire and then like crack the whip. But it's real easy to like bear down first and then ease up later.
So I think, go ahead.
Is it almost a military?
I think I think that's a lot of it.
And I think some people are going to hear that as being like, oh, he's trying to run guys off. And I don't think that's what it is. I think he's trying to see who's about what they're about.
Hey, he said it.
And that's a different thing than running guys off.
He said it. When you are who you say you are, it's just easy. Take it from a guy that lied for 5 years trying to cover up his personal life. It's so much more freeing to just
way easier.
Here I am.
And it lifts a burden.
which is one of those things, it's like I'm never going back there again.
No, because once you stop doing the thing that makes your life difficult,
it becomes a way of life.
Even if the cleansing process is painful,
it sucked.
Your life becomes so much better.
Zero question.
Again, simple, not easy.
So I like the way you landed the plane. You see coaches do this and teachers sometimes do it. Like you get that syllabus and you're like, OMG, off the heezy.
You're like, how am I going to survive this?
And then after 3 weeks, it's like, oh man, it wasn't like that. But you look around, like 7 people have dropped the class.
Yeah.
It's twofold. Yes, that can happen. But what really happens is you know what it feels like if you're going backwards.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, so if he's like this the first year or two, it's going to be almost impossible to go back, especially once you start getting your guys that you recruited and not so much inherited, even though they're all his guys.
Yeah.
It just becomes a way to do business. Because full disclosure, and a lot of my guys are like this, they would pick an era other than college to go back to.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know why? Because you had to be on every day.
Yeah.
Being on,
and that's not for everybody.
No, and being on every day almost got a lot of guys to quit. At
exhausting.
One point, got guys to contemplate quitting at one time or another in their careers.
But if you don't
every good player I know that I can think of at one point or another wanted to go home. But then you get to this point.
Yeah.
Where it's like, this is all we know. And it's weird because for a guy that fought it for so long that wanted to quit, you're around me enough to know there's only one way I can operate.
Yeah.
We're competing to get better, or we can't be around each other.
100%.
So you've got to fight life back.
I know we're up against it here, but
let me ask another open segment.
Let me ask you this, and maybe we take this into the open segment.
Save it. We'll go to break. Save that question,
because I got a question for you, and I think we're going to bring it a little back more to football. We're pretty philosophical there,
but I just think it all matters,
right?
Does. Because when you're looking,
it's the groundwork.
And look at what we're seeing with basketball.
Yeah,
what is Coach Bolt after in baseball? What has Mac achieved in basketball?
Mm-hmm.
The culture is self-sustaining because it's been put in place.
Yes.
This basketball team in Lincoln is not functioning.
Especially with Coach Mack, because if he recruits you, you already know what it's about, right? It's not new. It's not new there. That's just what they do.
Yeah, I'm in complete agreement. Hold that thought. I can't wait to hear this.
I think I have a question you're going to like.
Shano, we got one more open segment, right?
Yeah.
All right.
I'll allow it.
I wanted to tackle quarterbacks and the free agent price tag, but we'll see where
we'll get there
go.
Eventually.
Man, lots happening. That's Ravi, Lulla. I'm ODB. We're at the H&H Chevrolet Studios. It's Varsity Radio, as good as it gets. Hopefully, you're either on YouTube or 590. Pretty soon, we'll be on KFOR. Just wait a couple minutes in Lincoln. We got you.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 5 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes.
The 3 seed and the preseason favorite to win the Big East will have a chance to make some noise in New York City.
We turned it over, I think, 18 times against them the first time, and I thought a lot of them were self-inflicted, and obviously their pressure.
The fight's on for the crown right here.
And the Blue Jays are going to New York next week as the 3 seed. And the preseason favorite to win the Big East will have a chance to make some noise in New York City.
We turned it over, I think, 18.
Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
And there were some things along the way in the other competition. The other competition's a little bit kind of a lead into this, and this is everything. So, guys, the first time around, some guys pick their team based upon their position group, staying loyal or their friends, and they learn pretty quickly. Like, I better have a big guy, better have some fast guys, I better have some guys who are on time all the time. Hey, you're my boy, but you don't seem to get anywhere on time, so I'm not picking you. So I won't tell you who Mr. Irrelevant was, but it was a guy who started here last year. So it was pretty important that those guys, or one of the last guys, it's important that guys start to realize, like, hey, if my physical ability can match my accountability, and that can be joined with availability, then I can be a pretty good player. And so, we always want to talk about people's physical ability or their recruiting or their production. That's great, but tell me how accountable they are, and then tell me how available they are, and I'll tell you if they're a good player. So it's a fun time for me.
So it's as we welcome you back, Coffee and Cream in the morning. My man Ravi, Lulla, la, 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 la. That's 2 L's at R.A. Lulla. Sadie told me that you had never lost a basketball argument in your life. I told him I was going to hang in there. We got off to a little bit of a rocky start.
Oh, I was having a good time.
We agreed. We blamed apostrophe out. No, it was fantastic.
Yeah.
But that's what you get. Two guys that trust one another, and genuinely enjoy being around one another, so we can have these kinds of conversations, and it's fine. And then we kind of like this guy too.
Oh yeah, we love Shane
Schillerberg. Andrew, hopefully we're hoping he's on the man. He's texting and kind of tweeting.
That's a good sign.
So I think he feels good.
He's among the living. That's good.
Yeah. So we're good there. So Life is good. State finals start tomorrow in Lincoln. We will touch more on that tomorrow as we get a preview. We are like knee deep in why good programs win and what are some telltale signs and the practical application of it. And what's the difference between simple and easy? Because there's clearly a difference.
There is, for sure. And so I had a question for you.
Okay.
We were talking about, we were waxing poetic about the simple versus easy and the things that Coach Rhule is preaching and appears to be practicing in the off season here, and how that's getting certain guys to buy in. And we heard it in that clip, right? They go from choosing their buddies or choosing their choosing their position groups to, hey man, you're not on time a lot. I got to go a different direction here. That's that player-led accountability you were talking about, right? It changes pretty quick when you end up hanging an L because your buddy can't show up on time. Like you start being real accountable in a hurry, and if not, he's not on your team again, right? So here's my question. How quickly in your mind, having been there as a player, been there as a coach, how quickly in your mind do the wins have to come in order for this to be sustainable? Is that a fair question?
Yeah, that's an extremely difficult question because here's the deal. Let's see if I can land the plane here. It's a good question.
Because at some point the wins have to come for it to last,
They do. So here's what we got to figure out first is
I call it proof of concept. When does proof of concept have to happen?
So man, you've been here before. So this is what I was going to say.
Yeah.
If you're falling in love with the process and it's about the process, that's not going to waver.
Right.
Because it can be independent of the outcome.
Okay.
If you haven't learned to not connect the outcome with the process,
okay,
it better happen quickly.
So that's a TO thing, right? That goes all the way back to TO.
Yeah. Another good point.
Right.
I will let you elaborate because I think I know where you're going.
Well, that's just the thing and so obviously you were much more connected to that situation than I was, but for those of you who don't know, Damon played football at Nebraska in the 90s. I did not. But
you were a fan, though. We've learned that that's about the same thing.
Well, I mean, we do all say we when it comes to Nebraska.
I like it.
So that's the thing that you would hear Coach Osborne talk about or his players talk about him was didn't really focus too much on the wins and losses because we believed full-heartedly that if we did what we were supposed to on Sunday through Friday, Saturdays took care of themselves, right?
Total.
Is that a fair summation?
Yeah. I think at that time, he had a lot of nicknames.
Yeah.
We weren't really using Yoda back then. He was kind of Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Okay.
With the mind
kind of Jedi mind tricking you.
Yeah, because he said, and he would always say, I believe if we do the right thing for a long enough period of time, the wins will come. And if they don't, we'll sort that out real time. Oh, okay. So you're telling me, and we trust you, that if we do this, this, and this will put us in position to be successful. And he would say, yep, I'm telling you that. And we'd say, oh, okay, cool. We got you. Right. Because there were these.
So here's my question, though. With that, right? He's telling you that the wins will take care of themselves. And for your guys' teams, obviously they did. What happens if they struggle early? Like I know you said you have to disconnect them, but at the same time, you are.
Yeah, they go 0-2 with Minnesota and Colorado. You're going to have to reevaluate the process.
Right.
But you're not reevaluating in terms of scrapping it. You're reevaluating in terms of where are we real time? Is this about, because it always has to go back to, this is the whole key. It always has to go back to the methodology. So, hey, when I talk about this, and this, and we lost by 4 to Minnesota, another one score loss. And we didn't get over the hump against Colorado, another one-score loss. So there has to be this practical application that the players can see, that you walk them back through the process to revalidate the process.
So let me ask this. If the wins, let's say they go 0-2, and
Heaven forbid.
Knock on wood, let's pray that doesn't happen, whatever. But let's say they do. How much of keeping guys bought in on the process is Coach Rhule and staff taking accountability on their end?
It's 100% them.
Right?
100%.
Because then that's the only way you can reevaluate the process, right?
Yeah, because they're your leaders.
If they say, hey, we may not have put you in the best position to win, we're going to do better.
What am I a big fan of?
Accountability.
And model behavior, because one leads to the other.
Fair.
Model the behavior, you get to be accountable. Let's bring in, that's deep. We probably need a little more time for that. I like that.
Yes, indeed.
Let's bring in my man, Michigan Lance. Michigan Lance, what's up, buddy?
Hey, good morning, fellas.
Yeah, we're going there this morning, huh?
Yeah. You guys are tapping on some things. I'm going to go there a little bit, too. When you talk about wins and losses and how fast does it have to approach, and then you bring in T.O. Listen, everybody has to stop bringing up Tom Osborne. Tom Osborne has never been in this situation that Matt Rhule is in. I understand you bring him up because he's the last coach that had the most recent success in the program. But you have to go back to somebody that's not even on this earth anymore, and that's Devaney. When he took over a losing program and had to build a winner, Tom Osborne didn't have to do that. So this does not correlate to what's going on right now.
I don't want to speak. I don't want to speak for Ravi. I think he used T.O. because there are some similarities in terms of being process oriented.
Yes.
Right, but we don't know is what would his process have been if he took over Kansas State like Bill Snyder, or at the time Bob Devaney. You know what I mean? Like it's different, man. And DB, you're different because you've been as a coach losing team and built a winner.
Yeah,
they're just different.
Yeah,
and so when you talk about wins and losses, it's just going at you, Ravi. A lot of people always bring up Tom Osborne, the current thing that's going on in Nebraska football. And so, wins and losses, right? My thing is, especially when he's taking over, year two, like year one, listen, it don't really care if he has a winning season or not, and because there's a lot you have to do, and you got to weed out kids. It's to weed out players. People understand it, but it's okay. Some people got to go. Addition by subtraction, that's the real thing. And so he's building a program. So year one, hey man, do what you got to do to get your kids to compete and go hard 4 quarters to get them doing what you want to do, or what you guys talked about Sunday through Friday, right?
Yeah.
So then year two, hey, we better start seeing some real quick winter season, bowl game, like, getting towards that mark, and to build that consistent win.
Awesome. We'll come back to that. Come back, take a quick break. We got to move on, kinda. But coffee and cream, we're not going anywhere. Back after this.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
Coffee and Cream. Doing what we do. We had a lot of folks aren't enamored with Michigan Lance early on. Hey, listen, I'm going to defend both, and I'm not. This isn't an olive branch guy. I don't think that you were appointing T.O. because you have some weird affinity with Coach Osborne. I think you understand it's all relative. He couldn't get over the hump against a couple of good teams. You know,
back in like late 90s or late 80s, early 90s.
And remember early on he got his tail kicked by Barry Switzer too.
Yeah, in Oklahoma. Yeah.
So
he went through some changes in his process a couple times to get where he wanted
to be.
And
so that like the process matters. But I do also understand Michigan Lance's point because
starting in way different places
in terms of resurrecting a program.
Yeah.
I think there's much more pressure on Coach Rhule than there had. My opinion, this may be a hot take. You can laugh me off my own show if you want to. It'd be a lot easier once Andrew comes back because at least he can represent the other half. But I think Coach Rhule has it tougher than Coach Frost. Even though Coach Frost was the chosen anointed one, I think Coach Rhule has a much tougher grade because he's off to a much better tangible start.
Sure.
And he comes with more pedigree.
So I think that I don't disagree, but I think it's because of how badly people wanted Coach Frost to succeed. They were willing to make excuses.
And
for
remember, we're a little tougher graders now.
Yeah. Because
like we're a little more, it's like
more cynical.
Yeah, it's
we're
like
a little more cynical.
It's like the better cooking skillet, right? We're a little more seasoned.
Well, yeah, we've seen some things now,
right? So I I think it's a little more daunting. We don't have Joel yet, Shano.
Trying to track him down.
That's all right. He may still be asleep.
That's all right. It's early for some people. I understand that.
No, I get it.
A lot of those beat writers, they keep weird hours. I get that.
And he's an NBA guy, so he's probably watching.
He's probably staying up late. Yeah.
So let me transition real quick to the NFL and quarterback play. And we were talking off air way back this morning. It was still dark out. And I wasn't making fun of Jerry Jones and the Dallas Cowboys for franchising Pollard, because I think we thought that they may franchise Pollard.
Yeah.
I just wouldn't franchise Pollard. But if you're going to cut Zeke, I get it. But remember, Pollard is coming off the injury with another terrible tackle because guys didn't get their head in front. And
also, he's a running back, which you can kind of just find.
Wash your mouth out, Ravi, Lulla. Running backs matter. Everybody matters. Who would you start out with Friday when you said such and such matters?
All diet soda matters.
Yeah, all diet soda matters.
Yeah,
yes. Yeah. And running backs matter too.
No, I love a good running back, but Dallas is operating like it's the 90s.
Here we go. Everybody hates the 90s.
No, listen, the 90s are great, but like a running back in the 90s was more important or harder to get the production you needed out of without a guy than it is now. We've seen teams over and over again kind of piece it together and find guys that are either on a discount or maybe they're undervalued coming out of college, or their last team didn't want to pay them, so they're looking for a new landing spot. Like, so I think that they've put a weird emphasis in Dallas on running backs money wise.
There's a ton of there's a ton of running backs I think that you could get in this draft.
Yes, right. That's what I mean. Like,
so whether I had a franchise Pollard or not, I don't know. I think the big news, and there's a lot of it, Carr inks the deal in New Orleans.
Yeah.
I'm going to love to see the books because unlike Daniel Schneider, the New Orleans Saints will have to open up the books. How they pulled that deal off is
pretty good fit, though, I think, right?
Amazing.
Like, I don't know how the money's going to work.
Amazing.
Because the NFL salary cap feels like all smoke and mirrors.
Well, it's very – so that's why I like Veach and those guys in Kansas City. I think knowing numbers matters.
Yeah, no, without a doubt.
And those that are really, really good at it. And the Saints have been in a bad fiscal spot
for a while. Yeah.
But I think he automatically becomes the best quarterback in the NFC South. And you can make the case outside of Rodgers and Stafford and maybe Cousins.
You love you some Kirk Cousins.
I do, actually. So, but I mean, okay, so let's take a look at the quarterbacks in the NFC. Right? You got Hurts, you got Cousins.
Yeah, where do you put Hurts in that list?
Dude, I'm all in on Jalen Hurts.
Okay.
I was the minute he was drafted because he's a winner.
Yeah. I liked him at Oklahoma a lot. Well, I liked him at Bama. I got a lot better at Oklahoma. Yeah.
I'm team Hurts because I know if it got hectic for me, I'm calling that guy.
Yeah.
Jalen, I need to win a game.
So you're putting Hurts above Carr.
Boy, that's tough.
Carr is really productive.
Shane knows this. I have been a Derek Carr defender forever.
Okay.
But I've also defended Cousins. And I think they both were in similar situations.
I think that's fair.
Give either one of those quarterbacks a top 12 to 15 defense.
Okay.
And we're not only talking about them in terms of top 12, 13 quarterbacks. We're talking about them in terms of, oh, man, they're pretty good.
Like serious playoff run type guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
So I'll give you Rodgers.
Okay.
Just from a respect standpoint, let's go Rodgers, Hurts, Cousins, Stafford.
That's 5.
Right? So let's put Carr 5th. Right?
6. Rodgers, Hurts,
Cousins, Stafford.
Okay, so yeah, Carr's 5th. You're not taking.
Give me another one that I may be missing.
Okay, you don't like Dak.
I'll get so I'll entertain that
because Dak and Cousins I think are very similar.
And I've defended Dak in the past.
I don't think he's perfect, but I think they're very similar. If you're taking Cousins,
this is what I always ask people.
Yeah,
go back and compare Josh Allen to Dak Prescott statistically.
Yeah, no, Josh Allen's overrated.
One is a lot more heavily scrutinized than the other.
Josh Allen,
they're very similar.
Super overrated
So
right now because of how much he turns over the ball.
So Dak and Derek Carr, in my opinion, are about the same.
I think Dak, Derek Carr, and Cousins are all in that neighborhood.
Okay. So let's say
so you're not taking Fields.
No.
That's interesting, by the way. I would not have put Dak and Carr.
Are you taking
really?
Yeah. I would put Dak ahead of Carr.
Taking Andrew Jones or Daniel Jones because
he got paid,
or he's about to. It seems.
Yeah, I think he'll
is
get
it
paid.
getting done?
But with that, so
where are you at on Kyler before?
I'm still in wait and see approach.
Okay,
that's fair.
You're not a Goff guy.
Goff,
he had a nice season.
Goff better than the critics. What you're describing when you said Goff, and who was the first guy you just asked me about?
Kyler.
No, right before that.
Daniel Jones.
Fit.
Yeah.
See, Dable, Jones. Oh, yeah, I could get behind.
What about another guy got paid? Geno.
Okay, so what's
not
that
enough sample
deal?
size.
So 52 mil.
It's a 52 guaranteed. It's like it's the fake number is 103.
Was it 3,103? It was 5. It's 5,103.
3,103.
That's fine. He earned
and
it.
only 52 is guaranteed, so it's like 17 and a half a year.
So Geno is in the next tier behind.
So tier 2 in the NFC.
Yeah.
So that the quarterback play in NFC not awesome.
No, that's my point. So the Saints play good defense. They'll get a hopefully non-disgruntled, healthy Michael Thomas back. You still have Kamara.
Because you're not putting. I mean, if you move Carr back to the AFC, he's further down on the list, right?
He's the worst quarterback in his division.
Is he worse than Russell Wilson? Depends on if that was the real Russell Wilson last year.
Resume wise,
definitely
yes.
worse.
Yeah,
but current ability, I don't know.
Well, I don't know.
We'll have to see a year with Sean Payton first.
Yeah, and we'll see how this happens. Because I said this about Quinn when Dallas got him 2 years ago. I said he was the best offseason acquisition in the NFL.
Okay.
Will I say the same thing about Sean Payton? I have to wait and see what happens after NFL free agency.
Random quarterback question here. Where's Trevor Lawrence falling for you right now?
Trevor Lawrence, I liked him from the jump. So,
I did too, but he started showing last year, right?
So, Trevor Lawrence, if I had to do the draft all over again, I would draft him as a franchise quarterback all over again.
Okay, let me ask you this question.
And Jacksonville's on the uptick.
I agree. I really like Trevor Lawrence. I always have.
I may take Trevor Lawrence over Herbert.
That's what I was just going to ask.
Was it?
I was literally just going to ask. Okay, you have to draft. You're an expansion team. You get a supplemental draft.
Yeah.
Your quarterback choices are Herbert and Trevor Lawrence.
I probably take Lawrence.
I do too. I think Herbert's like a little overrated.
I do. So Herbert is who was the analogy I gave yesterday where you can't just quite get to what people think of him, even though it's not, I wouldn't call him overrated.
That's fair.
I gave it the Marlon Lucky reference.
Yes. Yeah. I can't remember who you were talking about yesterday, but the expectations of what he could be.
Yeah. He just can't get to.
You get graded on a curve.
You just can't get to what, I think people felt about Trevor Lawrence, but he's a winner.
Yeah. He's won everywhere.
So I think he's ultimately going to win.
And the tool, it's not just that he's a winner and he's got his skill set.
Herbert's spectacular.
Yes.
But
physically, Herbert's got everything.
The reason that I think he's overrated is number one, Herbert and Carr are the same person. Herbert hasn't won a meaningful postseason game yet either.
No, he hasn't. And he didn't win really anything meaningful at Oregon. They were good.
So do you know what the differentiating thing is?
What's that?
I would listen to any NFL experts that won the call. Well, Derek Carr doesn't scramble. He takes too many sacks. And I'm like, okay, that's cool. So Herbert can run around a little bit.
No, it's not cool.
Herbert can take some shots and keep on playing.
Because Carr's been healthy for the most part, right?
Except for the fractured ankle when he was on a heater.
Yes.
My man was winning with 7-8 offsuit, multiple hands. He was on a heater.
Here's the other thing about
By the way, we're going to have Joel at 9:30.
Oh, cool. Okay, good.
Here's the other thing about Trevor Lawrence real quick is yes, he's a winner. Physically, he's also everything you would want. That's a nice combination.
Big, strong, can move just enough.
I mean, he moves pretty good.
Dude. God, we got to take a break, man. John Fanta, we got to talk hoops. I want to come back to quarterbacks. Hopefully we can make time. It's tough out here, folks. It's coffee and cream in the morning.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream on Hail Varsity Radio with Andrew Rogers and Damon Benning.
Collins with the dribbles it off his foot. Is loose, picked up by the Musketeers. Desmond Claude, he's being chased. He dunks it.
Moore wants to attack, spinning, kicks. Dixon, left corner three. He's got it, a new career high in points as Dixon now has 26 points, and he's made 6 threes. Oh, my goodness, you got to love it.
And the Blue Jays are going to New York next week as the 3 seed. And the preseason favorite to win the Big East will have a chance to make some noise in New York City.
We turned it over, I think.
Oh, that is the Big East at its finest. Welcome back, Coffee and Cream in the morning. Ravi Lulla, who loves the Big East. Actually, he loves basketball in general.
I do.
I had to untape his hands. I had to get him ready. You know, when you get ready to spar, you need your hands taped. I had to get Ravi's hands. I had to cut the tape off this morning. He's arguing about the NBA and Steph Curry. He's here to validate college basketball. And now we have the ultimate olive branch guy, the peacemaker, if you will, who dominates college basketball and in particular the Big East. John Fanta joins us. John, good morning. How are you?
Good morning, Damon and Peacemaker. Man, I've been a lot of things. I've been a lot of things. I don't know, guys. Even I can't get 2:30 Eastern time Thursday afternoon for those two fan bases that are going to be inside Madison Square Garden to make peace with each other. There might be some blood.
John, you'll appreciate this. At 7:09 this morning, I don't know how we got started. We're arguing about the NBA, and I had to give Ravi the starting lineup of Craig Elo, Mark Price, John Hot Rod Williams,
Let's go.
Brad Doherty.
You're just a Cleveland guy. You can't. Come on, man.
And he was thumbing his nose up at the talent. And I said, you know who's going to appreciate that lineup? John Fanta.
Cleveland rocks. Cleveland rocks. Cleveland rocks. Cleveland rocks.
Oh, so John, I mean, you're looking at the seedings. Creighton gets the 3. Marquette has terrible odds. Creighton has the second highest odds to win the whole thing.
I know.
Villanova's got to win just to get in the tourney.
Right.
Like, what is going on in the Big East?
It's crazy. And I do wonder, I think Shaka Smart's probably showing his kids their odds to win this thing. He's got to, right? Like, wouldn't you if you were coaching Marquette?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
They have been, I'll tell you, they've been disrespected this year. I mean, guys, like, how does a team that went to Mackey Arena early in the year, lost by 5 points, how does a team that beats Baylor by 26, they beat Baylor by 26, and then they proceeded to play 20 conference games, and they won 17 of them. I'm not saying they're winning the Big East tournament, but at what point are we going to stop saying, like, I think a lot of people, their brains are computed to, well, Marquette doesn't win this time of year. Steve Wojciechowski struggled. Well, Steve Wojciechowski is in the mountains. Shaka Smart is winning and winning a lot. So I do think that everybody's just, proclaiming the winner of UConn Providence to make the final then. Mm-hmm. Watch out. This tournament is wide open. There's as many as 6 teams that could win it. I think a lot of people are on the Connecticut bandwagon. I would just say this. They went to Villanova and beat them. They have not proven outside of Storrs or Hartford that they could win consistently. Mm-hmm. And so they went on a winning streak. We all thought that they would when you looked at the schedule on paper. It wasn't that surprising. So I still go back to Creighton. I just think that this team is made to make a run again in this tournament, despite the fact that they don't match up great with Villanova. The funniest thing about Creighton is the first one may be the hardest one to get. And if they can get it, I think they'll win this thing.
John,
that was your thing.
It
right?
was, yeah. I would rather have played UConn than I would have.
I set the whole thing up for Ravi because Andrew's been out sick, so we go back to Friday, John, and I'll let you go. But I just got to set this so you can get into this.
Yeah.
It was Creighton versus Nebraska, John, and Creighton was a -1.5 game in the win column favorite over Nebraska in their respective conference tourneys. Nebraska now opens with Minnesota. He hates Creighton's draw, so he actually took Nebraska minus the 1 or plus 1.5 games won in the conference tournament.
Wow.
Primarily because
Nova.
he of Nova. Does that? Can you see that when Ravi's getting ready to unload here, John? Can you see it?
I can see what your thought process is because you have PTSD.
I do. I
do. You totally do.
I do. Yeah, 100%.
You have PTSD.
I told you, I'm
you
emotional about
are
it.
No, you're the person. You're the guy who's had that aunt who, growing up, you were really scared of going into her house because she'd always yell at you. I had that aunt. She'd always say, "Hey, go run a mile." I know it sounds offensive, but we've all had that aunt. And then after like 15 years, you go back into her house and she's there, and all of a sudden you're really scared of walking into her house.
Yeah.
But it's okay this time. It's okay this time. She got on some meds and she's doing better. That's what you have right now. You're scared of Villanova. You have what is it? Arachnophobia.
No, I do. Listen, I understand the likelihood of Eric Dixon going 6 of 8 from 3 and dropping a 30 burger on us again is not super likely. But I am still concerned about it. And I know it's crazy. I would have rather have played UConn in round 1, but I actually wanted to ask you about Marquette first.
By the way, nobody wants to play Nebraska the Big Ten tournament. I mean, I'm going to give. We live in a world where often we're like tearing people down, criticizing them. If you're going to criticize when they're not good, then you should give some level of credit. I give credit to not you two, but I'm going to give credit to Fred Hoiberg. I mean, I think that they have had an improved season. Good for the Huskers.
For sure. I did want to touch on Marquette before we get into Creighton.
Mm-hmm.
What did I thought they were going to be better than their preseason number 9.
Mm-hmm.
I thought middle of the pack, like 4 through 6, somewhere in there. What did we get wrong? Like, what did we miss about Marquette that has led them from going to what the consensus was, even the high-end consensus, to a fairly dominant regular season?
Yeah. So I think there's a couple of things. Number one, Shaka Smart last year when he came into the program, one of his goals was to get very mobile offensively.
Mm-hmm.
But that takes some time to process for even the guys that you have that you work all summer with. So I think that Oso Ighodaro now knows what he needs to do. And when he's picked that concept up, they've become very difficult to scout because they've got guys who have emerged seemingly out of nowhere, but really just off organic player development. I think Omax Prosper has just gotten better as a player. But more than anything, this comes down to Tyler Kolek playing with a special type of swagger, 246 assists to just 76 turnovers. I got to tell you, if he played in the Big Ten or the SEC or the ACC, he'd be a first-team All-American, and it wouldn't even be a question. The more I looked at it, now I actually voted him second team. And 2 guys that I really respect in this industry were like, yeah, no. Like he's actually probably one of the 5 best this year. And when you look at the numbers, now here's the difference with Marquette. Here's what I sense with Marquette. I'm sensing that the national thought is, well, they're 25-6, but they're really not the 6th best team in the country. Well, it's really hard to suggest. So what are you saying then? Mm-hmm. Are you saying that the Big East is overrated? If you are, that's fine. If that's your take, okay, let's see what happens next week. The only way we're going to know that is by what happens next week, is if these teams show up as higher seeds and win their games. But it comes down to Kolek and Cam Jones. When you have not good guard play, elite guard play, and you have guys that are bought in, Kolek doesn't need to score to impact the game. He just sets Jones up. He sets David Joplin up. He sets Omax Prosper up. And I think, fellas, similar to the PTSD of Villanova, everybody had PTSD of Marquette. Can't have faith in them. They can't get it done. When it's like, at the end of the day, Marquette got a coach who's been to a Final Four. Shaka Smart wasn't himself at Texas. I talked with somebody in the industry last night about Texas keeping Rodney Terry as head coach. And you know what the person said to me, person I trust? They said, Texas may not keep him as head coach, despite all the good he's done, because they really enjoy winning the press conference. See, at Texas, they do things different down there. At Marquette, Shaka doesn't have to be someone he isn't. And Marquette spends some of the most dollars in basketball of any program in the country. So I think we forget how many resources that they have, and now the coach that they have, and the fact that they ended last season the way they did with a very bad taste in their mouths, and that Smart didn't come in here to be status quo. He came in here to change the narrative at Marquette, and now it has happened.
Let me ask you this, John, because I think it's interesting. He plays 36 minutes a game. He makes 46% of his field goal attempts. He shoots 42% from three. He's an 87% foul shooter. He's 2-to-1 assist to turnover ratio. Should Xavier be better with Sule Boom, or do we undersell Boom in big moments where we don't fall in love with Xavier?
I think where people don't fall in love with Xavier is that they don't have much depth at all. And now with Fremantle out for the year, they really are a team that it's going to be tough for them to win 3 games in 3 days this week. They could do it. I don't think Boom should be undersold at all. I mean, I think he has a chance to be Kemba Walker at this Big East tournament.
Ooh.
This kid he's not a good scorer. He is a great scorer.
And Creighton fans kind of shrug because
they've matched up quite well.
Right? Yeah.
They've matched up quite well. I love the kid's game. I think he's got the ability to take it over. He's quick. He's good off the dribble. He's just he's a killer shooter. I mean, he will, if he gets into a rhythm, good luck. Start calling timeouts. I've been so impressed with him. I couldn't believe he wasn't a unanimous All Big East first team selection. I mean, he was that good for them this year. I think the other thing is that Xavier struggles defensively at times. And so as a result, and they lost at DePaul and at Butler. So if you lose to DePaul and Butler this year, I mean, those 2 programs could team up and probably haul a garbage truck through Chicago this season. Neither one of them's been any good. They haven't been consistent. I don't know what to make. I mean, I'm shocked that I thought at least Butler would be better.
Yeah,
they've been worse. They've managed to be worse. What happened? I thought Theamata would get them in a better direction. I got to say, it's disappointing. I don't know. Butler's future here, like, guys, they've fallen back in the Big East now. And they don't spend money like some of the other programs do. But here's the thing. When you lose to Butler and DePaul and you don't defend, you subject yourself to getting picked off on a neutral floor. Mm-hmm. So Xavier, as good as Xavier could be, this is kind of the nature of the Big East. As good as they could be is as tough as a day that they could have. And I'm putting the Musketeers on upset alert, okay? Typically when teams put together a nice performance to close the regular season, it's not a fluke. Seton Hall went into Providence, and they blew the doors off of them.
That's the start to finish.
Yeah.
I think Shaheen Holloway may have something to say in this Big East tournament. I think his team will be ready to play. Their defense is very good. Now they're starting to gain an offensive confidence. It's almost like No Kadari Richmond has kind of forced them to move the ball, if that makes sense. Sometimes when you have a great player, the ball sticks. And sometimes when you have a really good player then out of the equation, it changes the way you play, but it also changes how opponents prepare for you. So look out here. Xavier's on upset alert Thursday night.
All right, John, I got to ask you about Creighton. I know you've been high on them as of late. You mentioned them earlier as a potential team that could win in New York. What still concerns you about them when you look at that team? What are the red flags?
Their shot making is not nearly as good as other Creighton teams.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not. They should have beat Marquette at home.
Yeah.
But their inability to knock down some open looks was kind of glaring. Now, here's the funny thing about shot making. They could show up this week and just not miss. I mean, that happens. It happens in these conference tournaments.
And they've done that this year.
Yeah, of course. Of course. So it's that, and it's also like, I think you've got a couple of guys, you know, I think one in particular, I'm gonna just point him out. I mean, I think Arthur Kaluma is a really talented player. I also think Arthur Kaluma is thinking about his NBA career.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes that leads to some plays that are not college basketball plays.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of my sense with Creighton is I think they're a really good team. But they've got to buy into who they are now and just be together. Baylor Shireman hasn't been as great as we probably thought he would be.
Yeah.
But remember, there's only one basketball, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, I think part of it is the system. Part of it is, and I'll tell you what, the reason why Creighton could win this Big East tournament is that Ryan Nembhard did not get a single all-conference honor. That's insane to me.
Mm-hmm.
That's insane.
I mean, it's some really good guard play, though.
Yeah.
There is. But how many times do you watch the conference tournament and in a press conference the coach says, you know, he didn't get honored by the coaches, and you're all seeing, and, you know, that fired him up.
The funny thing is Nembhard is that guy.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, like it's personal.
Oh, he's taking that personal.
Oh, there's zero question with his personality. More likely here, John. Rick Pitino comes to the Big East. Ed Cooley stays at Providence.
Yeah.
Or Ed Cooley changes locations and Rick Pitino comes to the Big East.
No. I know where you're going with number 3. Let me be very clear on number 3.
Okay.
There's a better chance of me doing a show at the Foxy Lady tonight than there is of Ed Cooley being or than there is of Rick Pitino being in Providence. All right. You know, it's just
what if Rick Pitino lands at, let's say, St. John?
I just don't see it. So here's the thing. The funniest thing about it is,
I'm glad you didn't rule out Ed Cooley changing addresses. Thank you.
The Foxy Ladies, the club in Providence. I met the Spearmint Rhino.
There's actually one in Lincoln too.
Oh boy!
That I would know.
Whoa! All right.
I heard
Damon had a bit of a
somebody told me.
I can only hope Scotty Frost had a stop there before.
Depends on how the margaritas are, John.
What's that?
Depends on how their margaritas are.
Oh, wow, you guys.
Exactly. Oh, am I getting you guys in trouble? Well, let's get back to the show. Let's get back to the show. This is a family program.
Yes, yeah. Well, kids are in school already.
Yeah,
we're good.
That's all right. Exactly. So I think that I think a school should hire Rick Pitino. I think St. John should hire him. But the president at St. John's was the president at Providence, and he has a pass with Pitino, and it didn't go well. So, guys, I think Pitino's probably going to be coaching at either South Florida, maybe Central Florida, like one of these Florida jobs. I hate to say it. I think it would be great for the Big East if he coached in the Big East. I think it'd be fun. I think it'd be interesting. But, you know, the name that I'm getting here in the last 24 hours that could land at Georgetown, a name to monitor is Micah Shrewsbury from Penn State. You know, Penn State, let's face it, it's not a great job. Georgetown would be a level up. It's one of those unique scenarios. Like there's not many Big East jobs that are a level up from the Big Ten, just by virtue of like football dollars and stuff. But I would say Georgetown's better than Penn State in basketball. I mean, let's call a spade a spade.
Yeah.
So keep an eye on that name. St. John's, I don't know. God, your guess is as good as mine. Seriously, right now. I mean, I've heard a couple of names, none of which that say to me, yeah, that's their next coach. Guys, if you remember, and let me tell you, I do remember this very well. St. John's took days and what seemed like weeks in the desert to figure out who they were going to hire the last time. And then they hired Mike Anderson, and a Catholic school in New York decided to hold a press conference to introduce him on Good Friday.
I knew you were going to say that.
You should have known then. You should have known then.
Wow.
If I'm a St. John's fan, I'm saying, Father, forgive them. They know not what they do. Unbelievable that they did. I still can't fathom that you introduced your new head coach on the day the Lord passed away.
Well, he's single-handedly one of the best personalities in college basketball. John, let me get you out of here on this with a general basketball question. Ravi and I did a game of it was a 6-pack of questions, and I comboed 2 teams to go the furthest along the seed lines. Texas and Connecticut as a pair, or Creighton and UCLA as a tandem, which 2 make the most noise in the tournament?
Wow.
Texas and UConn, UCLA and Creighton.
Oh man, I'm gonna say UCLA and Creighton.
We both went with that.
That's right.
That's
you know what? And you know why? Coaching, experience, and just benefit of the doubt. And I think I'm picking more than anything. Like, I just love UCLA. I like Creighton. I really love UCLA.
Yeah.
UConn hasn't won a tournament game in several years, and they've yet to do it under Dan Hurley. So I thought they were going to break that drought last year against New Mexico State, and then I don't know what happened. So I watched 2 hours of quote basketball in Buffalo, and then the game was over, and the season was over, and that was it. So, sometimes with UConn and Texas, the bark is bigger than the bite. And so that's why I'm picking Creighton and UCLA.
Fantastic stuff, John. Enjoy the Big East tournament. The couple things I noted: upset alert. I'm going to be paying attention, Musketeer fans.
There we go.
Alert. You didn't call it. You put them on alert, so we won't be surprised.
And Xavier rolls by 25 to the
Yeah, we appreciate you. We'll talk to you in a couple of weeks.
Thanks, guys. See you.
Oh, he is hilarious. One of his best segments ever.
Yeah.
That's my main man, Ravi Lulla. We've had a program change. Joel Lorenzi will join us next on Coffee and Cream.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 5 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
Obviously, it's really important with the potential of 3 games in 3 days in New York. You need that depth to get through a scenario like that. And they've been playing better. Sharif has played really well. Francisco, I think, is now back in shape at 100%. Mason's continue to give us good minutes. And then, Fred was a lifesaver the other night at DePaul when Kalk got into foul trouble. So they've all had their moments, and, it's a difficult situation to be in because you don't really know when their number is going to be called. They don't know when in the game and how much exactly. The game really dictates that. But they've all done a terrific job, and they've been a big reason that we were able to go 7-3 in our last 10 games.
Welcome back. Coffee and Cream in the morning. Former Creighton Blue Jay in spirit, Ravi Lulla. Filling in for Andrew Rogers. Shane over there on the wheels of steel. We are live from the H&H Chevrolet studios. Ravi parked correctly today, so you will not need to pick up the phone and call Dingman's Collision Center to get any sort of door dings out of your car. I was amazed.
I did that for you.
At how many people came to Ravi's defense yesterday. They were like, it's in the lines. It's all good, even though I think that is atrocious in theory. But remember, family owned and operated, 25 years of service. Darcy, the family, she has taken as good a care of Coffee and Cream in the morning as any good babysitting parent can do. 4 great locations, locally owned and operated. The hub right there on 120th and Maple, which is now centrally located in the city of Omaha, given its growth. So make sure you stop on out and see the fine folks at Dingmans. As we welcome in Creighton beat writer, one of the funniest non-funny guys in the business, Joel Lorenzi, who has to follow up John Fanta, who had nothing but jokey jokes about the Big East. Joel, good morning, man. How are you?
Good morning, but hold on. What does that mean? Funniest non-funny guy. That sounds backhanded, man.
No, not at all. It's all love. And as the more you get to know me, the more I'm a tough critic. Like I don't like a ton of people, but the thing that I think is funny about you is it's just your personality.
Yeah, you're not trying to be funny.
But I think it's funny because of your delivery.
Funny how? Like a clown? Funny?
Like funny, like, man, that's pretty good. Like, hold on. I'm not just gonna let you get away with that. Like, we're gonna talk about DePaul. Right? Like, see, that's like that's funny to me because I did try to slide it in there. Kind of like
you did.
Kind of like, Harrison Barnes, Malik Monk, De'Aaron Fox. I know you had the Sacramento Kings slotted in to be 38 and 26 or 27 or whatever they are, right? It's Joel Lorenzi for the Sacramento Kings in the West right now, right? Or did I make that up?
Well,
I made that up.
Frankly, I wouldn't. I'm not sure. I was thinking too much about.
Do you know why I ask you that? Do you know why I ask you that? Because this is how my mind works. 2 months ago, I asked you about young teams on the come, and I mentioned Sacramento, and you said, "Well, that's a handful of teams. Like that could be this team." And you were right? It could be this team. It could be that team. It could be this team. You named about 4 or 5. But Sacramento is the team that appears to be poised to take the next step.
Yeah. And you know what? They've had a great regular season. What Mike Brown's done over there, I think he's the only one capable of maximizing the way that they have in the main game with Fox and Sabonis and just maximizing that offense and all the weapons that they have. Now, I don't know how far they're going to get in the postseason, but right now they look really good.
I don't want to play them.
No, not at all.
Kind of like Villanova. Mr. Scaredy Pants over here. I'll let Ravi get into why he has post-traumatic stress syndrome over Villanova.
Okay, so Joel, I'm not gonna let him just talk about me like that. I am sitting right here.
Hey, I'm right here.
So tell me if I'm crazy or not. Like, yes, part of it is recency bias. You see Creighton go in, get their head smacked in by Villanova, but part of it is that's legitimately a bad matchup for Creighton, right? Between the way Dixon plays and the way they pull Kalkbrenner away from the basket. The fact that, Whitmore is kind of an athletic matchup for everybody if he's playing with his head right. Like I'm not just making stuff up. Like Villanova's a bad matchup for Creighton, right?
Yeah, for sure. I think those teams, that physical brand, are always a bad matchup. Like I think UConn the same way, but just even worse because not only are they physical, but they're more athletic. They got probably more shooting than Villanova, and they're deeper. Which is why I think they got a good chance in New York. But Nova, the thing with Nova is people. Obviously, I think the thing with Nova is I think they've dictated the pace in the past 2 games. But like the Eric Dixon game is like an anomaly to me. Like people are so hung up, and people keep bringing that up for Kalkbrenner's defensive player of the year case. And it's like that's something that their defense and really that was the best game of Dixon's career. I really don't see that happening again. That was completely changed the game.
Did we lose him? You still there, Joel?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, there he is. Okay. Hey, so listen, we were just talking to John Fanta, and he said he's put a couple of teams on upset alert. One of them being Xavier, but another team that he likes, and he likened it to addition by subtraction. I know they just went into Providence and beat the brakes off them. I don't think they're going to shoot 56% from 3 again, but they shot 62% from field goal percentage. They had 18 assists. Do you like Seton Hall at all?
They're pretty nasty. Not gonna lie. I like what Shaheem's done over there. Um, with the personnel he has, that's a really bad. And they can't score, obviously. Like that's been the glaring deficiency for them all year. But he's turned them into, a team that could win games. I don't know if they could, make any noise in New York. But I like what he's done. And then on the Xavier front, that's such a cop out from John, because obviously
Hey, how do you really feel? You're kind of mincing words. Like, what do you mean?
Look, like it's easy to say Xavier is gonna be upset because of Fremantle, right? But I think they stayed afloat without him. I think people are just caught up on that news. I still don't think Seton Hall could beat them, frankly, because I just don't think they're great. But I know why he picked Xavier.
Joel, in terms of the Big East, and I want to take it away from the Big East tournament here. It's been, I think a lot of people look at the top of the league and say, hey, it's a solid top of the league, but I don't know if anybody thinks there's any elite teams there, and maybe that's disrespecting Marquette. But do you think there's any teams at the top of that league that you look at and say, yeah, they've got some Final Four, maybe national championship potential, or is it not that kind of league this year?
I think Final Four is a safer bet. I don't see anybody in the Big East that could win a national championship. My pick is still Houston. Just throwing that out there.
Hey, Can I ask you something real quick, Joel? Since you said Houston, where does Kelvin Sampson rank in terms of coaching elite? Because he gets oft overlooked, but man, go ahead.
Top 3 for sure. That was my favorite coach in basketball last year. Obviously, Bill Self is hard to argue against. I think Scott Drew's up there. I mean, the Big 12 next year. I mean, I don't know what you do with that league. They're gonna have the best coaches in the world. They already do have most of them. Because I think Jerome Tang is up there now too.
He's gonna get paid.
Yeah, for sure. But Kelvin's top 3 to me. I'll throw that out there.
Let me ask you about UConn. They're the favorite, plus 190 to win the Big East tournament. You and I are kind of kindred spirits because we're like, people forget how good they were. But I kind of feel like we keep saying, oh, man, if, and then fill in the blank. And they don't do the if very consistently.
Yeah, I think it's just with the athleticism, the shooting on their best day, the depth when they come around. For teams to have a day to prepare for them, even though these teams have played twice already this year, you have to play them day, and then they have to do day. If you consider a match, I feel like it's really hard to deal with them in this kind of setting, especially if they have a home crowd. It just seems like all the signs point to at least 2 games in New York. I think that's why they're probably the favorite.
Real quick, we got about 5 seconds. Who wins the Big East tournament?
Probably UConn.
Ugh. All right, Joel. We'll talk later.
Yes, sir.
Ron Johnson coming up on Coffee and Cream.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
My expectations haven't changed at all. I think I can be, the Mackey Award winner. I think I can be the best tight end in all of college football. I think I can be a first-round pick, second-round pick. It's just I've had a few setbacks, and the saying is one setback is just set up for a major comeback. And that's kind of how I look at it. I don't think it's changed the destination. It's just changed, a little bit of the timing.
Getting it in as we welcome you back to the final segment. We may have a programming change. We may move Ron Johnson. He's finishing up his show. And it's already a small segment here at the end. So we may move him to tomorrow.
A little shorty.
Just so he has the full allotment because he can go.
Yeah, for sure.
You just give him a couple of questions and he will inevitably.
That's kind of the play-by-play guy thing, right?
He will set that thing off, man.
Yeah.
So we'll see. I don't want to shorten his time, but it's interesting. Let's finish up Big East before I get to that Fedoni thing real quick.
Yeah.
In college basketball, who's your favorite? Is it UConn?
In the Big East?
Yeah.
As far as national or in the tournament?
In the tournament. Let's start small, my man.
I think
small.
Baby
steps.
I think it's Marquette. That's the team I trust the most.
Really?
Yeah.
On a short window for preparation, you still like Marquette.
So I
don't want to talk you into anything.
No, I
know
try.
That's impossible.
I'll be honest. I probably don't take that into consideration as much as I should.
Mm-hmm.
The 3 games in 3 days. but I have a really hard time looking at a team that I know has flaws and that I've seen struggle for long stretches.
I just think if you see Kolek multiple nights in a row, you can figure it out.
I would think that you could figure him out if you see him multiple possessions in a row, but that generally doesn't happen.
Well, it didn't happen to Creighton.
That's what I mean. Like,
are you going to be envisioning that offensive set in your sleep?
Yeah, I have nightmares
Low
about
ball screen,
it. Yeah, I wake up in a cold sweat. He's one of those guys that maybe we don't give enough credit to because of how he looks. Like, he doesn't look like anything spectacular. He's it's the Steve Nash effect. Not saying he's Steve Nash, but he's a very unassuming looking guy. But he gets everywhere he wants to go on the floor on a really consistent basis, and not just against Creighton. So when I look at that team, I look at Iguodaro. I'm like, that's a matchup problem for everybody. We haven't even talked about their leading scorer, Cam Jones, yet.
Their backcourt is filthy.
Like, I look at that team. Backcourts run March. We know this. I look at that team, and it's the only team in the Big East that I haven't seen stretches of, whether in preseason or in non-conference or in conference season. They haven't had a stretch where I'm like, ooh, they look bad.
Yeah.
Everybody else, UConn started off this like 7-7 in conference play. They were a 500 team through 2/3 of conference play. That's not great. Obviously, Creighton has had their struggles. Providence, I just don't think the talent level's high enough overall. UConn, Soleil Boom can disappear. Fremantle's not there. Like, I don't feel great about that, though they're probably my second choice. Marquette's the only team that through 20 games, and that sample size has to count for something, I haven't had a doubt about.
Yeah. Well, I'll give you my pick. I'm taking Creighton, and it is the non-homer pick.
Okay.
Because of what you said, you maybe weren't paying enough attention to. On any given night, Creighton can have the top two leading scorers be different.
Yeah.
I think it's very hard to prepare for in a short stint. I also trust Mac's staff the most in terms of getting ready for a game.
Sure.
On a short turnaround. So give me Creighton, a dark horse that is not
that's not Nova.
That's not top 5 in terms of picks to win. Top 5 is UConn, Marquette, Creighton, Xavier, Nova. Give me a dark horse.
Providence.
Boy, I'm not gonna do it. I'm gonna take Seton Hall as the dark horse. I like Providence.
Seton Hall can't score enough for me.
No, I understand.
And you know me, I put way more.
Well, that's what makes him a dark horse,
right? I put way more emphasis on offense. It's a flaw of mine when evaluating basketball because it's the thing I care about the most.
So what? Then take St. John. They can't guard a soul, but they'll score.
Well, that's the problem, though, is when they don't guard a soul, they can't score. Their half-court offense is some of the worst offense I've seen in my life. Yeah. Their half-court offense is booty.
Yeah.
That's
not good for those of you listening at home.
That's not good offense, right? Just because the numbers sometimes get high.
What about Djibouti?
just because the numbers get up there sometimes doesn't mean it's good offense, right? Yeah. So the team that I look, and honestly, that's part of the reason I don't trust Creighton all the time.
See, I can't stand Providence.
I don't either.
You talk about a team that goes
I just dismissed them because I don't think they're very talented.
But isn't that your dark horse?
No, I thought that was going to be your dark horse.
Oh.
I was guessing.
Oh,
yeah.
I'm going to take Seton Hall.
Mine's not really a dark horse. I just said, it's Villanova. That's not really a dark horse because people are all on them. But they're a 5. They're the fifth,
and
they're in a play-in game, so I count them as that.
But guess what though? I'm gonna cut you some slack.
Yeah,
because we're boys.
You're gonna give me Villanova as my dark horse?
They're both Villanova and Providence have the same odds, plus 1,500.
Oh, there you go. So that's not terrible. I mean, that's a long shot.
Yeah.
So this is why
when it goes from plus 425 to plus 1,500,
yeah, that's a gap.
That's the difference between Xavier and Nova,
between the top 4, and then so that's a long shot.
I'll give it to you.
So this is part of the reason I probably don't give Creighton as much credit as other people do, is because it's what John Fanta said, right? They sometimes go through stretches where their shot making is not very good. And that's what I don't trust.
But they can manufacture ways to grind it out.
They can, and their defense is good enough that, especially if you don't have a bad matchup with a stretch 5, that Kalkbrenner and that defense can keep them in games until they make just enough shots, right? That's what we saw last March.
Will Sanogo make another couple of threes against Creighton if they see each other in the finals?
Dude, he's more than welcome to.
Could you believe that?
I will take Sanogo.
I think he led them in 3-pointers made that game when they beat Creighton.
I think you're right because, listen, And that's one of those things where I agree with Coach Mack on, where
he's open for a reason. He'll live with that.
Yeah, if that's what it takes. If Creighton is going to lose because Adama Sanogo is raining down hellfire from 3, congratulations, UConn, you win.
God, that sounded like a line from what's boy on Infinity Wars? When he was, like,
Thanos.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It sounded like a Thanos line.
Yeah, it probably is. I watch a lot of Marvel movies.
Do you?
Oh yeah, I'm a big Marvel guy.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. I'm DC, but we've been through this before.
I'm a huge movie nerd. Like,
Well,
so I've watched
this is where we need Matt DeMarinis to kind of balance this out.
Well, he loves your DC stuff too.
Well, he's an Aquaman guy too. He understands the appreciation for.
Listen, I liked Aquaman. That was one of the better DC movies. You know what it is? I don't like who's the guy? Zach
Carpenter?
No, the
Shane,
director.
the director.
Zack Snyder.
Zack Snyder. I'm not a Zack Snyder guy. So
Yeah, he's ruined multiple movies.
The ones that aren't directed by Zack Snyder, I liked a lot.
Shane, is there validity in that? You're the Siskel and Ebert of the two of us.
I haven't seen. I mean, everybody says the Justice League Snyder cut. I haven't seen that.
It wasn't any better.
Well, now that you have Wi-Fi, man, the whole world is open up to you. 2023, my man finally gets Wi-Fi at home.
You know what I said when I got it?
What? Welvin the Great, not to be confused with Shane the Great.
What are we doing here?
I don't know, but that at the end of the day, my mom's probably rolling her eyes in disgust. That will never not be funny.
Oh, it's always funny. Always funny.
Shane, what's the
Well,
name
I mean,
of
that's what happened. I mean, I was like, I'm getting the internet today. Yeah, got him.
Oh shoot!
It had nothing to do with nuts or anything like that.
Like pistachios or
Yeah,
macadamia.
yeah,
Ooh, I love a pistachio.
I know.
Oh, they're so fire.
Yeah, super good.
Yeah, and now they make them. I don't know if it's by design or just how you. Maybe farm isn't the word, but like
harvest
how they
them.
come. Yeah,
yeah.
Thank you. Rolodex. They're a lot easier to open now in their shells.
Yeah, they are. You don't get the ones that are like closed up as much.
Yeah, that like you bend or break a nail trying to get in there.
You know what I learned?
What's that?
We're not going to get into anything these last 2 minutes probably. So you
totally off topic.
Are you a seafood guy? I know you like shrimp. Do you like seafood in general?
Remember, death row scallops,
mussels.
Oh,
so what I learned.
Oh boy,
you are not supposed to eat the closed ones.
Why? They're bad?
So if it doesn't open up when it's cooking, that means they're bad.
Really?
Like you can get really, really sick.
Kind of like getting the seed off an avocado. Like the seed on an avocado, like on the bum.
Yeah.
Should just come off. That's how you know it's right.
And if it doesn't, it's not ripe.
Yeah, leave it sit.
Yeah. So if you are eating a mussel and it doesn't open up after you've cooked it, don't pry it open and eat it, because apparently you can get really, really sick. I did this. I'm out.
Botulism, or like, what are we talking about? Sick?
Like if you eat multiple, I think you can die.
Oh yeah, that's a discourager.
That's what my wife made it sound like. I don't know if she was being dramatic. I really don't, because
is it different than not letting dough rise?
Yes, it's different than that.
Okay.
So we were out, and I knew if they were like closed, you couldn't eat them. But I was like, it's open a little bit. I'm just gonna pop it open.
I'm Team Natasha on that one. I'm gonna let it brag.
She's like, no, do not do that. She was like freaking out. She thought I was gonna die, and I was fine. Obviously, I'm still here.
What's the matter with your throat?
It's a little scratchy.
I don't know.
Are you talking dough like bread?
I need some bit.
Make that money. So yeah, pistachios and mussels. Don't pry them open. Let them be.
Lastly, see, we're
in a little PSA for
people. Not to be confused with your traumatic disorder.
No, it's PTSD
over Villanova. Well, I don't want to make light of it because some people actually have it.
Yeah,
but you are traumatized
a little bit. Yeah.
Are you ready for tournament play this morning?
I'm excited.
You get early college basketball, man. Fantastic show. Shane, we appreciate you. We appreciate you, the listener. That's Ravi. Lulla. I'm ODB. We'll be back tomorrow morning with coffee and cream. Don't you dare miss us.